I'm going to call this meeting of the Salem Budget Committee to order. Will the recorder please take the roll?
Mayor Peterson?
Here.
Member Bennett?
Here.
Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Nanke?
Here.
Member McCoy?
Here.
Member Dickey?
Here.
Member Benjamin?
Here.
Member Benars?
Here.
Member Lewis?
Here.
Member Berger?
Here.
Member Kylowite?
Here.
Member Bailey? Absent. Member Moore Green?
Here.
Member Wildfang? Absent. Member Gonzalez? Absent. Member Hazlitt?
Here.
Member Clark?
Here.
Member Pruitt? Absent.
Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as we get started, I noticed we have, tonight we're going to do our two budgets. We didn't get to last week, and we have a number of other budgets to go through. We have people signed up for the library fund as well as the TOT fund, and so unless there are any objections, we will move those up to go after the review, after item 7, after the city manager's budget. Are there any comments or concerns about doing that? Okay, I understand I do not need a motion for that to happen.
And I would just like to say that I think if we could move them up before the city manager's budget, so the order would be after legal, it would be the library and then the cultural and tourism fund.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong one. Yes, so they will come right after item 6. Okay, and I forgot, do we need a motion to approve our minutes? Yes, I need a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, moved by Member Bernard, seconded by Member Clark. All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, we will move to our handout material. Ms. Jacobs?
Thank you. Kelly Jacobs, the city's budget officer, and welcome this evening. I have 5 handout materials to discuss very briefly with you. The first 3 items were in the packet that you received via email, and the 2 items on your desk are with the additions agenda. The first item in your handout, or I beg pardon, in your packet that was emailed to you is the summary of Budget Committee actions through April 22nd. And I wanted to bring your attention to this item because in addition this week to the reports, the requests for information that have been made by members of the Budget Committee, this handout also includes a wish list now. And the 2 items on the wish list are adding 1 police officer position to the downtown team, and the cost here includes salary and benefits, the cost for a bicycle, uniform, and other equipment. And the cost that we are estimating for that addition is $101,450. And then the second item is, and I'm hoping that we have represented this with the committee's intent, funding to provide for 1,280 additional hours per year of seasonal staffing in the graffiti abatement team, and the cost there $13,500. So what that does, it brings the current level of seasonal staffing to the equivalent of full-time. So that provides for the equivalent of full-time staffing. So 2,080 hours per year.
Yes, Member Bennett.
Yeah, just a question on that. It rises to the level of full-time staffing, but we're talking about 2 part-time
That is correct. It could be 3 part-time people, depending upon what works best for the police department.
Right.
It could be 1 person, 2, 3, whatever
So they have
configuration works best.
They have the additional funds to do sort of additional seasonal workers.
Exactly, and hopefully, you know, what is most strategic for them as they staff that program.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, and moving on to, if I could, to the second item of handout material, it is the fire department's 2014 stats at a glance. So this is a report that is resplendent with tables and charts and graphs. And the fire department realized that perhaps you would need additional assistance in understanding that information. And so handout item D, which is on your additions agenda, I'm skipping, and I'm sorry for that, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there's additional information in your additions agenda to help you interpret the resplendent charts, graphs, tables in the Stats at a Glance. That is correct. So it's item 4D. Item 4C is a report from, an information report from the Community Enforcement, or the Community Development Department from their Community Enforcement Division, and it's about the Seasonal Grass and Weed Enforcement Program and where they are currently funded for that additional weed and grass abatement. And I won't dive into this. If you have questions about this report, I would ask you to wait until Director Gross provides his presentation this evening. And then the last item of handout materials is errata sheet 3, and it is just a request to accept corrections to a few Scrivener errors in Book 1. And none of these errors have any budget impact. They're just simply to aid in comprehension. And so I will need a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve, to accept the errata sheet 3. Yes, thank you.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Member Benars, seconded by Member Cailloux-White. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, we will now move on to the review of Human Resources Department budget.
Good evening. I'm Miney Hansen. I'm the Human Resources Director. Move this slide forward. Human Resources has 2 programs.
We didn't have a screen down over there. Oh.
Okay. Human Resources has 2 programs. The first one I'll address tonight is Human Resources Administration. Human Resources Administration is part of the general fund. There are 8 FTE with a proposed budget of $1,203,960. Human Resources mission is to collaborate with departments to provide innovative solutions to create a workplace characterized by integrity, personal accountability, and mutual respect. The program provides centralized human resources services to all city departments. The HR staff works with departments to ensure city compliance with employment laws such as FML, ADA, and any other alphabet soup you want to add to the employment world. HR also assists the departments with recruitment and selection. Last year, there were 137 positions posted and over 6,105 applications screened. There are 6 labor unions that represent city employees. HR is responsible for negotiating and maintaining the collective bargaining agreements. HR also maintains the city's compensation and classification plan. The compensation for positions that are covered by collective bargaining agreements are addressed as part of the bargaining. A market analysis for non-represented positions was completed as part of the preparation for this 15-16 proposed budget. Salary range adjustments for 7 positions that were determined to be out of market with our comparators are included in the 15-16 proposed budget. Those are included in the individual departments that are affected. Over the past several months, Human Resources has begun a process of evaluating the long-term human capital needs of the city and how best to leverage the existing resources within the department to meet those needs. As a result of that evaluation, the proposed budget reflects changes to staff assignments. The reorganization resulted in a savings in personnel services. The resulting savings was transferred into materials and services, specifically into training and legal expenses. The increased training budget will allow HR to develop additional citywide training programs to enhance employee skills and provide growth and opportunities. The proposed budget also increases in the area of legal expenses. As I mentioned earlier, the city now has 6 labor unions. 2 of them are fairly new. While we hope not to have an increase in legal expenses, the sheer nature of having additional labor unions is likely to increase that expense. Over the next year, HR will be developing a more comprehensive training program and training and development program. We will be looking for ways to create opportunities to refine our communication skills within our staff and our managerial skills, as well as creating an onboarding program that highlights the city's organizational culture and goals. HR will be finalizing implementation of a new recruitment software which will make it easier for interested candidates to apply and will increase the city's web presence. Currently, our web presence is limited to our own website. The implementation of the new software, which is a software program currently used by the state of Oregon, the city of Portland, Multnomah County, Marion County, will give us greater reach and ease of application. We also be continuing an evaluation of the city's employment-related programs and the department's business processes. We're looking to leverage technology to reduce some of the unnecessary or redundant processes within HR. The second program within HR is the Self-Insurance Fund. The Self-Insurance Fund is comprised of two areas, the employee benefits and risk management. This budget is the 365 or Self-Insurance Fund. The Self-Insurance Fund has a total proposed budget of $38,692,800, representing a 7% increase over the prior year. Employee benefits accounts for $28,351,460 of the total proposed budget. Employee benefits includes all the insurance and administrative costs associated with providing benefits to our employees. The proposed budget for risk management is $10,341,340. There are currently 7 FTE assigned to risk management and employee benefits combined. The risk management and benefits programs are responsible for purchasing all insurance coverages for the city. This includes traditional property casualty insurance, excess workers' compensation, as well as the employee benefits of medical, dental, vision, life, LTD, and a variety of others. Risk and benefits staff coordinate all claims processing within the city and work closely with our third-party claims administrators and city departments. The programs also provide loss prevention and loss control services. The proposed budget for the employee benefits section had a fairly sizable increase of 5%. This comes as a result of a significant increase in our stop-loss coverage. The city purchases stop-loss insurance coverage for medical claims that exceed $175,000. The premium for that coverage increased 16% for policy year 2015. Legislative changes to health care have significantly impacted the cost of stop-loss coverage and the cost of claims. The city has a self-insured retention for both workers' compensation and liability of $500,000. In order to ensure that we have sufficient funds held in reserve, an actuarial study was completed this year. The actuarial report provided recommended reserve levels for both general liability and workers' compensation. Based on the report, reserve levels in workers' compensation were increased. The reserves are held to pay for costs of claims that have occurred and are expected to occur. Human resources and budget staff worked closely this year in analyzing and refining our allocation method. The allocation methodology is used for liability and workers' compensation charges to the departments. The allocation method applied in the proposed budget uses both actual claims experience and potential exposure and has allowed us to more accurately allocate costs of insurance for this year and in the coming years. Oop. What did I do? Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Over the coming year, the employee benefits staff will continue to look for health plan changes as related to the Affordable Health Care Act and reduce the city's health insurance costs. The increasing cost of health insurance has continued to be one of the cost drivers for employee benefits, and a review of the current plan design as well as cost containment methods are underway. Increases in costs of insurance have exceeded what we would anticipate in most other areas. The risk management team is revitalizing the workplace safety program and developing a loss prevention plan that targets individual departments' experience and loss profiles. Is there any questions?
Member Bailey?
A couple of questions, please. A couple of questions, please. On page 48, where it briefly describes the administration, it talks about staff is comprised of 8 FTE, which you showed on the graphic. Then it says the remaining 7 FTE. So it's a total of 15
Right.
then?
There's 8 in the general fund portion of the program and 7 in the self-insurance portion.
And again, then a couple of questions. The savings in salaries and wages that you talked about, and reallocate to training. I'm showing under training really only an increase of 6,000. Would that be under other professional services? You'd be contracting that out?
Yes.
That kind of training?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things we would like to do is develop some what I would call just-in-time training, that desktop training, so we don't have to lose productivity by bringing employees into the office for training. So we'll be using some consultants to help us put together those work.
Okay. And then just the last one, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but I'm noticing that photocopies went from $5,400 to over $10,000, which is quite a projected jump.
We are moving to networked printing. Right now within the office, we have a variety of small printers around, and those small printers, because of the cost of toner and maintenance, and those are all on their way out. And so rather than replacing all of those individual, we are going to a multifunctional device. So we have an outlay to go to that networked printing model away from the individual printing.
Okay, makes sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you. I failed to call for public testimony. I didn't have anybody signed up for public testimony on human resources. Was there anyone here that wanted to testify? Okay, Member Anderson?
Thank you. I have a follow-up to Member Bailey's second question about the training. I presume the goal is to have more in-house and less vendor-provided training.
Correct. But in order to build that, we have to have some assistance to get this started.
Sure.
Over the last several years, we've put very little time and energy into training as budgets have been decreased. So we knew that we couldn't staff a full-time position, but have looked toward having some outside consultants help us with the conversion of some of our training materials into those web-based or desktop-based models, and then also developing some train-the-trainer tools that we could then use across the city.
A follow-up, thank you. And then I have a different area. Following up, I presume that training is for the citywide on many things. So is the training budget in HR, or is the training budget also in other departments?
A little bit of both, Councilor Anderson. So HR provides the citywide training around topics that affect the city. So for example, the training programs we have in the works right now are harassment, non-discrimination, communication. Departments budget as well for department-specific training, police training, fire training.
Okay.
So the training HR provides, though, is that umbrella or soft skill training around those other areas.
So that will then, you're going to in-house training more, will not really reduce like the special training that the police have, the fire has, other people have, but it'll only reduce the citywide training on general topics, hopefully.
Correct.
Okay. Then another area, you were talking about the increase in the salary range because we were out of market, and with the comparators, I think is the term you used, which is a nice word. We've heard some of that, I think it's with the unions, is statutorily mandated as to whom you can compare. I'm wondering if within the HR department, is that statutorily mandated, or do you look at other comparators?
So for, as a general rule, in HR, we try to stick with the same set of comparators. It's a fairness and an equity. Certainly, there's no law that says for our non-represented we have to stay with the same comparators, but it seems fair and equitable to stay with the same comparators where appropriate. There will be times when we pull the comparators and they have no comparable position, and so then we look into other public entities for similar or like kind positions in order to come up with enough to determine the market.
That makes very good sense. Thank you very much.
right, are there any other questions for Ms. Hanson? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will move to review of legal department.
I heard that.
Didn't come from me.
It will.
I don't want to disappoint you.
I just messed it up, didn't I?
There we go.
What I did. All right. Chair Dickey's, members of the Budget Committee, my name is Dan Atchison. I'm the City Attorney, and I'm pleased to present the proposed Legal Department budget for 2015-16. I'd like to recognize Ruth Ann Stellmacher, the Legal Office Supervisor, for her hard work and expertise in putting this document together, and to Kelly Jacobs and Ryan Zink for their assistance in guiding us through the process. The Legal Department's proposed budget is $2.148 million, with a total of 15 full-time employees. The $2.15 million budget represents a $140,000 increase over last year's budget, or about 3.7%. The budget is made up of about 92% personnel costs. The largest drivers of the increase from last year's budget are about $65,000 in salary and insurance costs, and then a combined $58,000 for some software pieces that we're looking at for an agenda software and a codification service. The 15 full-time employees would be composed of 8 attorneys and 7 staff members. The legal department consists of 2 divisions: the city recorder's office, which is 1 to 1.5 FTE, depending how you look at it, and then the legal department, or the city attorney's office. The attorneys are essentially divided into 3 different sections or units. You've got 2 prosecutors who handle misdemeanor prosecution in the Salem Municipal Court, 1 litigator, and then 5 general counsel, which includes myself and the deputy city attorney. The legal department also has 3 legal assistants that were devoted to prosecution and litigation issues, 2 office assistants, an office supervisor, and the city recorder. Generally speaking, the legal department provides legal advice and problem solving for all the city departments, as well as the Urban Renewal Agency and the Salem Housing Authority. Also provides service to the city council and other boards and commissions, prosecutes misdemeanor crimes through the municipal court, and represents the city in litigation as well as administrative proceedings. The city recorder in that division is the clerk of the city council, which puts together the city council agenda, handles testimony that's submitted to the council for public hearings and other agenda items. Is also the city's elections official, city's records manager, and archivist. Significant changes over the coming year. Over the past year, we've implemented the Laserfish system, which is essentially a system to scan PDF documents and to provide easier accessibility. We're also, over the last year, purchased and are this year installing a new file records management system, which is essentially going to bring our office at some point to a paperless office system. As you might imagine, the legal department has thousands upon thousands of records just that the attorneys are working with, as well as the hundreds of thousands of records that the city recorder has. A recurring theme for this year's budget is sort of trying to use technology to make us more efficient, so you don't hear that most often used phrase, "it's held up in legal." One of the other software pieces we want to do is agenda software. The current system we have is a homegrown system that was put together several years ago. It's amazing how Byzantine and complicated it is for city staff to use that system, to get their items into the recorder, and for the recorder to put together an intelligible agenda. The new agenda software system will make it much easier, essentially a paperless process for all the departments, and ease the burden, particularly on the city recorder, but for all city departments. We have a new recorder this year. Kathy Hall, who most of you may know, retired last year and moved to Florida. And Amber Mathieson, our new city recorder, has done some wonderful things for the division. She's working very hard on updating our public record system to make them more easily accessible to the public and to the departments, is working to update our current agenda system to the new softwares in place. Part of what she's doing is using the Laserfish system to get all of our most commonly requested public documents, ordinances, staff reports, resolutions, deeds, things like that, to get them into a searchable system so they can be easily recalled. The city surveyor spends quite an amount of time digging through our filing cabinets in the recorder's office trying to find a particular easement for a particular subdivision. Eventually, that's all going to be electronic, and it will cut down his time as well as the development community who needs access to those documents as well. Codification service essentially is what a lot of communities use to have their code, or their Salem Revised Code in our case, to have up online. Right now, it's a system that's up on our webpage, and it's fairly easy to access and use, but the search function isn't that great. It doesn't get updated that often because it's very cumbersome for us to update those. By using a third-party vendor for a codification service, it'll cut down immensely on the amount of work that the recorder has to do, as well as making it a lot easier for folks to access it and search it. For a future outlook, we talked about some of the efficiency things we're trying to do through use of technology. We're also going to continue to provide a full range of legal services. The City of Salem Legal Department is one of the few departments in the state that provides a full range of legal services, including the city recorder. Some legal departments might not do prosecution, some of them might not do litigation. We handle pretty much everything that comes at the city. We'll continue to do that. My goal is to keep our quality service up on those, but to provide it more efficiently. A lot of times the departments may have long-term or medium-term projects they want to get to, but because of the triage that comes in through legal, some of those items have to get pushed to the back burner. My hope is that if we can become more efficient in having a file management system in place that allows us to find files more easily, to use documents that have been prepared in the past instead of reinventing the wheel, we're going to be able to get to some of those projects in a more timely basis. Another thing that we've been doing over the years that I like to increase our frequency of is providing trainings for city staff, the council, and boards and commissions. We've been pretty consistent providing just general public meetings training and quasi-judicial procedures training and parliamentary procedures and that sort of thing for the council and the planning commission and the landmarks commission. We're really trying at this point to get out to some of the other neighborhood associations and boards and commissions to get that training out to them to help them understand the process a little bit better. And when I used to do this for a living in private practice, I always said if I agreed with the staff recommendations that I support the staff recommendation and urge you to support it. So that would be it for me.
All right, thank you. Was there anyone here who wanted to comment on the legal budget from the public? Okay, any questions from Budget Committee members? Member Anderson.
I don't want to disappoint our head of the legal department here, so I do have a couple questions. It relates to increased efficiency through technology. It looks like the ratio of lawyer to legal assistant is 8 to 3. I don't know, you had two, I wasn't sure what they were called.
We've got 2 legal assistants who work primarily for prosecution. We have 2 prosecutors, 2 legal assistants, and those 4 positions are very, very busy.
Of course.
And we have 1 legal assistant who does primarily litigation, and that works with our litigator. And that person is also very busy. Yeah. And not that all of them aren't busy in one form or another, but then we have 2 staff assistants or office assistants. They aren't formally trained, they don't have any particular legal knowledge, but one of them works primarily with the general counsel attorneys, helping us with some of the things that we need. One of them works primarily with reception and answering phones, as well as the backup to the city recorder. You may recall when Kathy was on leave for a while, and then when she left, Amy Johnson filled in for her at several meetings. She is shared between the recorder's division and the city attorney's office.
That's the 1.5 that you were talking about. And actually, I don't know if you know historically what the ratio has been, but it certainly seems like an appropriate ratio with technology, so that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
General counsel attorneys tend to need less staff assistance. We're not writing a lot of pleadings. There's not a lot of filings to be done. It's more long-term work as opposed to the things that need to have those quick deadlines for court.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to ask a couple specific questions. I noticed that on the budget on page 65, the bottom item is building services, and I see that there's a recommendation for $11,200, that's a new service or a new charge being made to the department?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me explain that. That's for our lobby area. Right now, as you might imagine, dealing with the court and the clientele there, we get a lot of folks coming in for public records requests, for discovery requests, a lot of different things that come in. Right now, it's easy enough just to open the door and walk right into the legal department. What we'd like to do at that point is provide a more secure lobby. And we've worked with the facilities department to provide some level of security for our folks to make it a little bit easier for them to work with the public.
I think it's a good idea, absolutely. I apologize if it was written in the text and I overlooked it.
No, it wasn't well identified there, so thank you for that.
Okay, good. All right. No, I think it's a good idea.
All right, thank you. So now we will go ahead as we reordered the budget and move on to the library.
Good evening, Chair Dickey and members of the Budget Committee. I'm B.J. Toey, the Salem Public Library Administrator. Once upon a time, there was a place where everyone in the town gathered to meet, to share, to learn, and to listen to wonderful stories. Mo Willems and I would like to present That Is Not a Good Idea. What luck! Dinner! Excuse me, would you care to go for a stroll? Sure. That is not a good idea. Would you care to continue our wood walk into the deep, dark woods? Sounds fun. That is really not a good idea. Would you care to visit my nearby kitchen? I would love to. That is really, really not a good idea. However, our library is a really good idea. Yes. To help meet the needs of our community, the library's proposed budget is just over $4.7 million, which enables us to open to the public at the main library for 53 hours a week and retain the 16 hours that we're currently open at West Salem Branch. Using Collection HQ, a collection analysis tool, the library has become increasingly responsive to customer needs and interests in order to offer collections that better serve our community. Rejuvenation of our facility continues to be a primary focus of our support boards and staff. We use best practices to redesign our virtual library. We offer a variety of educational, entertainment, and cultural programs for young children, teens, and adults. Our programs reflect and highlight our community's diversity. We provide rich early literacy experiences, curriculum support for students and learners of all ages, and an annual summer reading program that helps prevent reading loss in children in the summer and inspires a greater love of reading in teens and adult readers. CCRLS, the Regional Library Consortium, moved the library catalog to a new integrated library system in December. CCRLS and library staff have spent several months in training and have been fine-tuning the new system to create a better experience for users. 3 library support boards funded a renovation of the children's room. Local artist Kristen Coons created breathtaking entryway art pieces for the main and upper floors that leave no doubt in any child's mind who's coming into the library where they go to find the children's room. The renovation added an additional story room, a new public computer area for children, new carpeting, and paint. After 2 decades at the Oregon State Library, the Willamette Valley Genealogical Society is losing its home due to the closure of the State Library's public reference reading room. We're partnering with WVGS to allow them to continue offering their materials and expertise to our community. The move-in date's expected to be June 1st, and we hope that their services will be starting shortly thereafter. Our library building continues to age, and like all city buildings, meeting the need for facility maintenance continues to be a challenge. Unlike most city buildings, the library is a highly visible and well-utilized public space with over 600,000 visits from our community members every year. We want to be the community's living room, a place where Salem residents come to gather, to learn, to relax, and discuss diverse ideas. To advance this goal, a potential project is the donation-funded conversion of a storage area on the main floor of the library, what I like to call a prime real estate, into a comfortable, welcoming reading room with shelving for current magazine issues. Staff will partner with our library's advisory board, foundation, and friends to accomplish this project. The new library computer system pulls materials of any format, whether books, DVDs, audiobooks, ebooks, magazine articles, into one search to make it easy for patrons to find exactly what they're looking for. It allows patrons to use their smartphones to search the catalog, and staff to use tablets when they're out in the community at events to provide new library cards and circulation services wherever our patrons are located. Future modules for our system that are being developed will provide strong analytical tools that will help assess the best way to provide the resources that our city's residents want and need. Salem residents currently have access to a statewide program that provides ebooks for them to check out. Our library is looking for at least one additional resource for ebooks that will allow us to customize our virtual collection to help meet the needs of our own community. The library seeks more efficient ways to help patrons to handle library materials and to reallocate staff. One potential project being explored by CCRLS is to tag all materials in each of the 18 public libraries with RFID, the radio frequency identification tags that you see on the things you get in Fred Meyer's. RFID would enable library customers to more quickly check their own materials out using self-service machines and provide more in-depth security for library materials. Staff would be able to check materials back in more rapidly and use RFID to find misplaced books on the shelves and inventory the collection. Costs associated with RFID conversion will be explored during the coming year. And that ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So I do have some members of the public signed up on the library issue, and so first I will call Carol Mitchell to the podium. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak. After 2 minutes, the orange light will come on, and at 3 minutes, the red light will come on.
Thank you. BJ is a tough act to follow, so instead of being humorous, I'll be brief. I'm Carol Mitchell. I'm the chair of the Library Advisory Board, which is a city board appointed by members of the council. I'm personally amazed every time I go into the library, any time of the day, at the diversity of people and groups who are using the library. Babies and toddlers in lap-sit story time, whole Spanish language speaking families at Spanish story time on Wednesday nights. After school, students of all ages working on their homework, using library computers or getting help from reference librarians. Middle school and high school students working on videos and other projects in the teen scene, learning to collaborate together. Book club members getting kits. Retired people enjoying magazines, books, newspapers, art lovers browsing the permanent collection, which can be checked out, by the way. The library is a unique service. People love to go to their library and their parks. They may need other city services, but they enjoy and choose the library because there's something for everyone. My board is passionate about informing the public about how many and how diverse the services are. We're trying to connect with underserviced audiences with information about things that are valuable to them. We've learned, surprise, that not everybody reads a local newspaper. So we're using other ways to get people's attention. People are getting their information from multiple sources, so we're using personal contact, phone calls, email, social media, any way that we can reach niche groups of people who need to know about the library. One of our top priorities is youth literacy. A board member with an education background is targeting homeschool families. They don't get information the same way that kids in public schools do. As a result of our outreach to those people, 700 families are expected at a resource fair in May where they will get information about services at the library and at no cost to them. A member with an interest in seniors is connecting local senior centers with new technology such as a transformation station where you can take your old film or records and convert them into DVDs or CDs. And their library classes on how to use an e-reader. I used that myself a couple of years ago. A board member who's a mom with young children has made it her mission to connect families with the children's area resources. She looks for business and nonprofit partnerships. A recent one was called Young at Art, a store that provides a place for children to explore. The merchant's happy to pass out newsletters or put up posters. Those are just a few of the things we're doing to showcase library services to new audiences. And I would like to thank all of you for your support of the Salem Public Library. It makes a world of difference to the community.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Mitchell?
Yeah, I have a
Yes, Mayor Peterson.
Thank you. Hi, I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for your service on the Library Advisory Board. How many years have you been on the board?
Several, but I recall that you were on the board some years back, so you know whereof we speak.
Well, actually, I was on the foundation board. I never was high enough level to get onto the advisory board. But sorry to be flippant, but I do really appreciate your service on the board. And Sam Hall, I see, is here. And we really do count on you to be our eyes and ears in the library as well as out in the community to tell us what the community needs and wants from the library. I just have one question about the use of the library by people who speak other languages, who read other languages, and may not even be reading or speaking English. Is there a program in the library that does provide other language books and materials?
There is, and I may defer to BJ on that, but one thing the board is exploring, one of our board members has access to a billboard on the east side of Salem, and we're looking at a Spanish language message on that billboard about using the library. And I would turn over to BJ. I know there are additional materials in Vietnamese and Spanish, and our children's librarian who is here has even grouped Spanish materials all together so they're easier for families to find. But for more details.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
We definitely have collections in multiple languages for children, for teens, and for adults.
Good.
And we have some conversation groups that meet in several languages at the library on a regular basis, as well as our 2 children's storytime programs. One is bilingual, English and Spanish, and one is done completely in Spanish.
Okay, great, thank you.
We have 2 more members of the public signed up to speak, and then we'll get to Budget Committee questions. Okay, so I have Jean or Jeannie Stewart.
It's Jeannie.
Jeannie, thank you for coming down.
Yeah, my name is Jeannie Stewart. I am the chair of the Friends of the Salem Public Library. We are one of the 3 support groups that help raise funds for the library. I'm here to talk about the positive impact a volunteer community has on the Salem Public Library system and to stress the importance of these volunteers. In order to meet the community needs, we have developed a volunteer system in the library that helps bridge the gap between the budgetary limitations and the wants of the community. In 2014, 361 volunteers donated more than 23,000 hours of their time to help support our library. Many of our volunteers bring in a vast amount of knowledge and experience from their work in the private sector. Our younger volunteers bring in youthful enthusiasm while gaining valuable work experience. Through their time and efforts, the volunteers show their understanding of the importance of a strong library system and its positive impact on the community. The Friends of the Salem Public Library, my group, volunteered, contributed over 5,800 hours last year. Most of this time is devoted to our store, and if you haven't visited our store, please do so. It's wonderful. And our 2 book sales that we have actually 3 book sales. If you haven't attended those, and I know the mayor attended our last one, and thank you so much for coming. They are wonderful. The hours worked by the Friends of the Library help support funds, resulted in funds to support the programs such as the summer reading program that BJ mentioned. In 2014, 6,100 children participated in the summer reading program, with almost 93,000 hours spent reading over the summer. You can imagine how much that helped them retain the level of reading for the next school year. We also help support the adult summer reading program, which allows parents to set a positive example for their children. The funds have helped with the renovation of the children's room, music concerts, the annual sleepover, and many other programs offered by the library. We believe the community needs a place where families can participate in activities that bring them together in a safe, fun, and learning environment. The Salem Public Library has filled this need by becoming the community's living room. Without the dedication of our hardworking volunteers, the library will not be able to offer these varied programs to the community and help improve the quality of life in Salem. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for coming down and for your work with the Friends of the Library. Are there questions for Ms. Stewart? All right, thank you. All right, I have one more person signed up, Sam Hall.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Dickey, members of the committee. My name is Sam Hall. Actually, I'm Richard Samuel Hall, so that I'm not accused with other Sam Halls in town. I'm here as chair, president of the Salem Public Library Foundation this evening, the third of the groups that has been mentioned. And I can endorse everything that's been said ahead of me and perhaps be briefer. But first, I want to thank you all for your long hours of dedicated volunteer service. We do appreciate it. Secondly, I want to say that we, the foundation, I think all of us, support the budget that has been presented to you for the library. Personally, I'd like it to be some more, but I understand that there isn't some more these days. Some of us have worked for 30 years and more to try to find some more, but that's perhaps a subject for another evening. This evening, I just want to stress the cooperative, collegial community efforts from volunteers and you all as volunteers in supporting a quality library in this community. I personally use it a lot. I enjoy it a lot. I'm looking for the right adjective and I can't find one. Let me just speak to a couple of examples. One of the things that the foundation and the Friends and others do is sponsor lectures and concerts and other educational programs in the community. I like them. It's a pleasure to be able to use city tax-supported space to present programs that are funded by volunteers. We have a number of those. And most recently, I think if you have your budget book on the cover is some pictures of our most recent successful project, which is the children's room. Space sponsored by and paid for by the general fund, if you will, but the donors in the community provide the enhancements that make it go. I think that's very valuable to the community. But let me finish by a more philosophical point of view. For me, I believe that a free public library is a core essential service. If you want to have a good democracy, you've got to provide a place where everybody can get the information they need to be a good citizen. And it looks like I've got just enough seconds, perhaps. BJ stimulated me to mention a children's book, or as my friends call it, a family book, that impressed me recently called Going Someplace Special, written by a woman who grew up in Nashville in the 50s. and was allowed to go out of her home and into the community only in a very limited way because of the segregation was there. But the public library in Nashville was open to all on an equal basis. Those times have changed a little, but there are still people in our community that need free access. So I appreciate your support with us for the library. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Hall? Member Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, for your comments. One of the things you mentioned is the need for more, and I think any budget in the city talks about needing, money. You can always do things with money. I'm wondering, from your perspective as a library user and someone heavily involved in the library system, where would you put more if there was a magic hat? What's the next thing? Is it more hours? Is it better materials? Is it more staff? Is it better programming? Where would more go in your perfect world?
Well, you tempt me to speak out of turn when I've got a good library director, but more hours. It's a shame that we're closed on Sundays in the summer. It's a shame that we're closed on Mondays all year round. For a community our size, we could well have a branch or two beyond the limited hours in West Salem. We have talked over the years of having one out east. The foundation got land. The city said, fine, get the land, but we can't afford to run it. So that kind of thing. A special cause of mine would be some marketing. The city has chosen not to spend money to market the library, to get the word out there, to run the ads in the buses. If I had a little money, I might do some of that as well, because I think we are not as well known as we should be in the community.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else here from the public who wanted to address the library? Okay, we'll move to questions of staff, and I know Member Bailey had a question.
Thank you very much. Actually, Member Berger actually asked the question that I was really leading to. But in plain English, we are not adding any hours or any capacity this coming year. Is that correct to either library?
That's correct. Our increase is just barely over $100,000 over the current year budget.
Okay, so it's as we've been for the last several years then.
That's true.
Okay, fine. The other one was, am I reading this right, that under other professional services, the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library Service dues, or our contribution, is $4,500 a year? Is that correct?
For the amount that we give them, it's to pay them back when they send one of our patrons to the collection agency. There's a $10, well, it's an $8.95 charge to process that, and they pay it up front, we pay them back.
Well, I guess I'm just surprised that does that help us be a member of that regional cooperative? Is that
That's just, the collection agency is just part of what we do. We don't actually pay a membership fee to be part of it. Every resident in Salem who owns property pays that like 8 cents per thousand in property taxes, and that's what supports CCRLS.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Member Benars, then Member Anderson.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions real quickly. I noticed that subscriptions and books, the amount that's being spent on that has been dropping the last 3 years, and it's proposed to drop again with the proposed budget. Can you speak to that? It would seem it would be counterintuitive we'd be spending more.
Well, it would be counterintuitive if we didn't have to spend 86% of the budget to support staffing. But 86% of the library budget goes toward our staffing needs, which keeps everybody hopping and running all the time, because like every department in the city, we don't have as much staffing as we could really use. That leaves very few pots when we have higher costs for health benefits and for PERS to take it out of. The materials is really the pot left.
I noticed that. I was hoping it was because perhaps we weren't getting as much printed and more digital materials, and it was costing less, therefore.
No, digital materials can cost more, a lot more than our printed material.
Wow.
We can pay $200 and some for an e-book. You can buy it for $25 or $30, but public libraries can't.
Wow. Two other small questions that I had. There's just a definition of leave pay off.
Oh, that's if someone is retiring and they've accrued vacation
Got it.
leave.
Okay, and the other one was controlled equipment. It seems to be dropping as well.
We switched the category that we're buying our computers out of. You'll see that there's a rise in the small equipment line that kind of compensates for the drop in the controlled equipment.
Okay, simple. Thank you.
Member Anderson?
Thank you. I'm interested in the WVGS.
Yes.
Where is that going to go? And is there any sort of financial arrangements for them moving from the state library to our library?
We have the space already set up. We have rearranged some of our reference area on the main floor right behind the reference desk. We have a spot, a large round table that will house probably 3 public computers for them to work with members of the public who are doing the genealogical research. And then we have a desk for their volunteers to be using. Their materials will go into the shelves directly behind that. We've moved our reference collection out of there because that's getting smaller. We're not using reference books the same way that we used to. We're using online materials for reference. We are not charging them anything to be part of Salem Public Library's facility. We have asked them to assume the cost for putting in the data and phone lines, and they will be taking that to their meeting on May 7th to see if the group will agree. So there isn't a charge to them, but we think it's going to enhance the services the public library can provide.
Thank you.
Member Berger, then Member McQuaid.
I remember my first year, I think, on the Budget Committee, we cut the West Salem Library, and I believe it was from 32 hours to 16 hours. Is that correct?
31 to 16, yes.
31 to 16. Do you have an idea of how much it would cost to bring those back?
Right now, we're using Central Library staff to send over there because they're the best trained, and we're backing up their time at the main library using part-time exempt. We have drastically cut what it costs to serve West Salem because we're not offering programs, we're not offering reference services. So you can't really double what we have right now and say that that would restore services at West Salem. I think the number was pretty close to $300,000 before we cut it. So there'd probably be a little increase because staff costs more, but I would say around $300,000.
So what is in the $78,000 to run West Salem now?
Pardon me?
In our budget book, it says $78,000 to run 16 hours at West Salem.
Yes.
Is there a sense of, can you describe what's in that number? I mean, you have staff. Is that just the staff time?
It's pretty much staff, although we do have some money in our materials budget to buy new materials because we still want to provide new materials at West Salem. So we have a reduced budget, but we are buying bestsellers and new children's books and such for them. And it does cover the part-time exempt that backs up our main library staff that go over. We have utilities. We pay $1,000 a year for the lease on the building to Roths. So the basic costs of running a building.
Okay, thank you.
Member McQuaid?
You mentioned 86%.
Member McQuaid, could you use your microphone, please?
I'm not used to that. I have such an outside voice. No, you're... 80% staffing, how does that compare to other libraries our size?
It's pretty equivalent, except they have a lot more staff. That's a very traditional ratio for a public library.
Okay, so that's normal. Okay.
Yes.
E-book cost. You mentioned you wanted to enhance e-book resources.
Yes.
What do you do to enhance e-book resources?
So right now, the materials that our patrons can check out is through the Oregon Digital Library Consortium. It's a statewide consortium. Most of the public libraries in Oregon belong to it. They pool everyone's money, they buy resources, and they're available to everyone. But it means when you want to get a popular book, you're in a long waiting queue to get it. So we take advantage of something called the Advantage program, where we can buy multiple copies of bestsellers, and then they're only available to Salem residents to check out, or fee card holders. But there's lots of books that aren't purchased by Oregon Digital Library Consortium because the publishers don't work with them. So we would like to go to another group that provides, usually it's a publisher or a book jobber that provides ebooks, and enhance the variety of materials that's available for us to buy in ebook format.
So when you say an ebook costs $200, is that you can then check it out for as long as anybody wants to check out the book, or is that for a set period of time for that fee?
There is a 3-week loan period or a 1-week loan period with ODLC. You can choose which loan period you want, but it is a limited time, and then it disappears off of your device. And they don't check out simultaneously. With most of the retailers that sell ebooks, you can only have one user with one book. So if you want multiple access to a book title, you have to buy multiple copies.
One final question. So when it was all print books and you had a bestseller, did you buy 10 copies or 15?
Yeah, I would say our first purchase for the 7th Harry Potter was 35 copies for the main library. So even with print, we bought a lot of copies of things that we knew were going to be in high demand.
Mm-hmm.
And in so many cases, they fell apart and we threw them away, and at that point, didn't need quite that many copies. But yes, we bought multiple copies of print too.
Okay, thank you.
Member Anderson?
I'm new to this, so I'm sure this question I'm going to raise may have been discussed in prior budget meetings, but it's one word, bookmobile.
Yes, bookmobile. We currently own 2 bookmobiles, and we use them for a program that we take out to all first grades in the Salem-Keizer School District. Since 1984, we've been making 1 visit per school to talk to first graders about what a public library is, to give their parents an opportunity to get them a library card, and then every first grader gets to come on the bookmobile and check out a book, whether they have a card or not. We do this with the Assistance League of Salem-Keizer, and they provide the volunteers who go back to the school to pick up the books when they're returned. We take it to events. We take it to, since last summer, the Saturday market. We're going to do that again in June and July, so that we can catch some people who maybe aren't library users, as well as our regular patrons, outside of the library, to really highlight the fact that we have these services. There isn't money to do neighborhood bookmobile stops.
So that would include, there's not money to put one in front of the West Salem Library other than the 16 hours it's open?
Well, it would require staff.
Same thing, it'd be the same cost, basically.
Yes, we'd have more access in the building than we would on a bookmobile.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor Peterson.
Thank you. I do have a question that has to do with the library hours, and I appreciate what was asked earlier. Do you have any figures as to what it would cost if the library were to be open, the main library were to be open, say on Sundays for 4 hours or 6 hours?
During the summer? I don't have current costs, but I can certainly bring them back.
Okay. I'd be interested in seeing what that would cost.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Member Benjamin.
So the next year's budget is going to be a little over $4 million. Is that what I saw?
It's going to be 4.722.
Okay, 4.7. And how many volunteer hours was done last year?
Over 23,000.
23,000?
So it's equivalent to about 11 full-time staff people.
And so 86% of that budget is for staffing.
That's correct.
Would it be possible to have more, or have your pool of volunteers keep the West Salem Library open longer, with just only having 1 FTE, but having 5 volunteers? Has that been explored?
Well, we use a lot of volunteers at West Salem now for everything but front desk service. We have issues of privacy where patron records are available to the person who's checking things in and out. And it takes staff to manage volunteer help. We love our volunteers.
Sure.
We couldn't do what we do without them, but we use considerable staff time to manage and keep them productively employed. I don't think that that's the best model of service at West Salem.
Okay. Well, the reason why I ask is because there's a lot of departments here in Salem that can't use volunteers for one reason or another, or nobody wants to volunteer, yet they get the city's business done. And so that's why I wanted to see if 86% of the budget is because of staffing, and we've got a lot of volunteers that are in pocket, ready to go, how can we mobilize them to extend the hours? If it's just a matter of making sure that we have an FTE working the front desk, but if RFID becomes available, that it won't be a need for that front desk person to be a city or Salem employee or library employee.
Well, in the ideal world, that's probably true, but with RFID comes an investment that would be required by the city to buy the machinery that goes with it. Just having the materials tagged and having a checkout and a check-in station is not going to handle it. It'll help us to have RFID even if we don't make the investment for the extra equipment, but that would be some upfront equipment. The other thing is that one staff person isn't necessarily going to be able to handle a desk at West Salem. We have people coming in who get new cards, we have people who need help on the computers, people who need help signing up for the computers, and people who are checking materials in and out. So one person is probably not going to be able to handle it, and there's a lot of training that goes into our staff.
So if we had increased participation or patronage of the library, which we all would love to see, that would mean that we'd have to increase the budget exponentially to do that.
We might take longer to get books back on the shelf. Right now, our turnaround time is often within a few hours of getting things back on the shelf because of our volunteer corps. Right. We would probably be slower. We would probably have to re-examine what we offer.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mayor Peterson?
Yeah, I just have a point that I'd like to make, and I really want to say a real sincere thank you both to to all three organizations of volunteers. The Friends of the Salem Public Library, I think, has been in existence for many, many years, and is the result. And the result has been a tremendous number of volunteer hours. I think that people first connected through that. And then with the Salem Public Library Foundation, the tremendous funds that you've been able to raise. Also, the Friends raise funds, but the foundation's real purpose is raising funds. And without that money, I think our library would really be a less attractive, a less inviting, and a less educational facility. And so I thank you all, and I certainly thank our Library Advisory Board. You've helped us in the past figure out how to bring the resources that we could to the library and how to keep our library up at such a high standard. So I want to thank all of you for that. And to also say one more thing, and that is that you have become a role model for other organizations supporting the Foundation for the Police Department, the Foundation for the Fire Department, that have both started in just recent years. And I think that's a real credit to you too. It's part of your legacy of community involvement and support. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. And you make it necessary for me to put in a plug. Our Friends will be celebrating their 50th anniversary this August with a celebration in the plaza.
Oh.
So we hope you'll join us for that.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks. So I just have a really quick comment. I was going to ask about how you're planning on enhancing the e-reader collection, but you addressed that already. And I probably mentioned before how much I love the library to go. I mean, it's just fantastic. I can just sit at home and check out books, and they are, a lot of times the ones I want I do have to put on hold, but then it just sends me an email and automatically sends it to my Kindle. It's just an amazing resource that we have. So that's really great. I'm really glad to hear that there's going to be some enhancements to that. But aside from that, so we had the children's library remodel grand opening a few weeks ago, and I wasn't able to go to that, but I recently got to go to the library on a Saturday afternoon when you were doing Read to a Pet. That is not something you can do electronically. Let me tell you, that is a real, I mean, that's just one of those things that you provide, and kids were reading to books. I got to talk to some of the if you're not aware of what that is people who own therapy animals bring them in and just sit down, and they're all just really, really nice dogs. And I understand sometimes they have other animals besides dogs. And kids just sit down and read to them. I mean, they just pick up a book and walk on over and sit down and read to the animal. And it's just, I mean, it's great. It's great for the animal. It's great for the kids, great for the families. So there are a lot of really, really neat things going on in our library. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who volunteer your many resources for our library.
I'm very proud of the fact that Salem Public Library is known throughout the Oregon community for our wonderful children's programming. They look to us for it, in spite of the fact that our budget is so much proportionally smaller than a lot of libraries.
Right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, so this time I think we will take a 5-minute break and come back and start our next fund. Okay, we're going to move on to our Cultural and Tourism Fund budget. This was previously item 11 on your agenda. Before we do that, I would like to remind everyone, budget committee members, the staff who's presenting, and public who are testifying, to make sure that you put your microphone close to your mouth so that you can be heard. I've heard that that's not been happening, so would really appreciate that. All right, so we will go ahead and start with our Cultural and Tourism Fund.
All right. Good evening, Chair Dickey, Mayor Peterson, and members of the Budget Committee meeting. My name is Christopher Nider. I'm the Management Analyst for the Community Development Department and the Staff Liaison to the Culture and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board. And tonight I will be presenting the Culture and Tourism Fund proposed budget for 15-16. It's $3.9 million. And the Culture and Tourism Fund is a special revenue fund derived from Salem's transient occupancy tax, or hotel motel tax, which is a 9% tax on overnight stays within Salem city limits. This this money can be used for the following. It can be used for vehicular and pedestrian entranceways into the city, urban beautification, improvements to or operation of major tourist attractions or cultural facilities, and for activities provided by the city or contracts promoting Salem for conferences, conventions, seminars, or tourism in general, as outlined underneath Salem City Charter 56. And for the fiscal year 2015-16, the beginning fund balance is nearly $1 million, with approximately $3.2 million in anticipated transient occupancy tax revenues, which is about a 7% increase year over year. The Culture and Tourism Fund provides funds for marketing the city and convention center as a tourist and event/recreation destination. Funding is also used to support the operations of cultural and historical facilities, put on special events such as World Beat, Salem Art Fair, and various other cultural events held throughout the year, and capital improvement projects to these properties. City beautification is provided by keeping up with the landscaping at our major parks and city-owned historic buildings. This year, the special events grants increased from 16 to 24. That's a 50% increase, due mainly in part to the 7 new small grants that were approved for emerging organizations that the council approved last year. New this year, there's funding for the Public Art Fund in coordination with the public art wells being installed in the downtown area. And park improvements this year include the continued funding for trail improvements in the Minto Brown Island, replacement of the sprinkler system at the Bush Pasture Park, and softball field improvements at the Wallace Marine Sports Complex. The Culture and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board continues to look forward to funding and increasing tourism to Salem through promotion of the city as a cultural, historical, and recreational destination. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
All right, I have a few members of the public signed up to speak. First is Scott Snyder.
Good evening, Chair Dickey and members of the Budget Committee. As chairperson for the Cultural Promotion and Tourism Advisory Board, it's my pleasure to present you with our recommendations for funding of grant applications meeting or exceeding our evaluation process in the following categories: operating, special events and projects, both large and small, capital improvements, and this year, as Chris Nider mentioned, the small grants for non-501c3 special events and projects. As Chris mentioned, we were able to have 7 out of the 10 organizations that applied qualify for funding in this new event, including things like the Vietnamese Voice in Salem 2016. It's their New Year's celebration, On Your Feet Friday, and even Hair the Musical. Aside from some disqualifications for paperwork items, we did ask the City Attorney's Office for input to sort through situations that occurred where a similar, the same tax ID number was used for 4 different applications when the maximum that one organization or tax ID number is allowed is 2. City staff reviewed and disqualified the 2 lesser dollar amount applications, and they reviewed the lesser items and submitted by a 501c3 for a one of the new non-501c3 grants. The advisory board takes very seriously on the fiduciary responsibilities of funding activities that meet the legal obligations set forth in Policy C1 and Section 56 of the SRC. We're motivated to assist emerging and established organizations alike with funding to market out to out-of-town visitors, as well as improve the quality of life for the citizens of Salem. It is with a great deal of thought and considerations that the recommendations that you see in front of you for grant applications were made, and I would I thank you for your time and effort that you put forth in making the budget process work, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, any questions for Mr. Snyder? Yes, Benars.
I just quickly thank you first off for coming down and presenting. Since you're so integral to the convention center, I thought maybe it would be appropriate to ask you. I noticed that the convention center marketing support is actually down from last year. At least that's what is proposed in the budget. Is the convention center becoming a lot more self-reliant on supporting itself?
I can't answer that specifically. I manage the hotel, as you know, yeah. But I have very little input or in integration with what happens with the funding for the convention center.
So I'll get that back at this from staff later.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Member Bennett.
Thank you. Scott, I was curious on the, I'm trying to figure out, I guess this is in the special events, where we see ones that were funded last year, these events funded last year but not this year. Is that because they didn't apply generally, or what happens there?
There could be circumstances where an event did not apply, or they didn't qualify based on the scoring rubric. We have a 75, an average point value of 75 in order to qualify for funding. And so if the event didn't qualify under the group's scoring, then they would be a 0 this year.
So it's sort of you're all in or all out? Is that how it works?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much for coming down.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, I have Chris Merritt.
Good evening, Chair Dickey and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris Merritt. I'm the general manager of the Hampton Inn and Suites, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Travel Salem and what they have some goals that I feel very passionate about. I don't very often come out and to get involved with the city and what's going on with the travel for the city. But one thing that is very important to me, and especially at this time, is the travel industry is experiencing an incredible amount of growth right now all across the nation. And Oregon has become a very, very popular destination. And that's mostly because of the efforts put out by Travel Oregon and their 7 Wonders of Oregon campaign. It's been very phenomenal. Well, now is really a time that we need to be focusing on capturing as much business traveling through Oregon as possible to stay within the city limits so that we can capture that revenue and those top funds for further advancement of the use of those funds. I know that one of the main ways to do that is through offering quality information to the potential travelers so that they can make a really quality decision on where they're going to spend their money, what community. There are some very good travel destination marketing organizations out there, right? Our neighbors, Portland, Oregon. We've got Travel Lane County. Those guys do a very good job as well, and we're competing against them for that same traveler dollar, So what would really help us is to get Travel Oregon or Travel Salem's website up to par with what they have going. Better mobile access. That's just the way the industry. That's just the way that the world is going. Better information on the facilities that we have available, easier navigation through the website so that our potential guests to our community can make an informed decision, And I know that some of the budget restrictions that have been put in place on their proposed budget, that's going to be the first thing that they're going to have to cut is our ability to upgrade the website and make it a little bit better for us to capture that business. As it stands now, I would say someone not familiar with Oregon will make their decision to stay in Portland or Eugene based on what they have available to them information-wise. So I would recommend and ask of you to please consider the full budget for Travel Salem, and I very much appreciate your consideration in this matter.
All right, thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Merritt?
Yeah, I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, go ahead.
I think Councilor McQuaid had his hand up.
I saw you first.
Did you? All right,
Lynn
okay.
McQuaid, and
All
then
right, and then, okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate you coming and certainly appreciate your work with Travel Salem and the tourism business because, yes, you're right. I think Salem is really getting up there on the sought-after list for visitors, and we appreciate that so much. It's important to our economy.
Absolutely.
I am looking back at the Travel Salem budget and the records for previous years, and I remember that last year we made actually quite a sizable increase in the budget for Travel Salem as our contractor for tourism services. And this was the budget for 14-15 was for 13-14 was $550,000, and it had been kind of in that range since about the fiscal years 10-11 on up. And then last year we upped it to $713,781, which I remember was to add 2.5 FTE, a sports marketing person, and a destination marketing person, and then an administrative staff person. Half-time. And now I see that the increase, there's also an increase requested for this year in the budget to 771 or 772,000, which is in our budget book. I pulled the contract that we have with Travel Salem, which is a contract between the City of Salem and Travel Salem to provide destination tourism services. And I look back in the contract, and I understand the need for upgrading the website and upgrading the platform, et cetera. But in looking at the contract, it's very clear that the Travel Salem, I'm going to take a minute to find, going back through my sticky notes here. So among the scope of services that are to be provided, contractors shall furnish all labor, materials, supplies, equipment, office space, visitor space, reference and background data and information, and all other things necessary to perform the work. And then it goes further to identify, let me get here, that visitor hospitality services they are to provide services, activities, and personnel to create and sustain hospitality programs that allow visitors to receive information and assistance while recreating and visiting the city. This includes utilizing a broad array of tools, i.e. visitor center, visitor guide, telephone, on-site information booths, fax, internet, etc. Well, it would seem to me that upgrading that website is just an integral part of the administrative services that Travel Salem should have in its budget and should be providing as a regular course of the work that they do. So I'm a little hard put to understand why suddenly there would now be an assumption on the Travel Salem's part that the city of Salem should provide an extra fund to do something that clearly in the contract is it should be provided just as an administrative support to the work that they're doing.
Sure. You know, I'm sorry to say that I probably don't have all of the answers that you're looking for.
I know, and I apologize that you're the person that we're having to ask this to rather than the director of Travel Salem, but in
that's quite all right. You know, I'm a little bit familiar. Okay, I know that it is. They do. Travel Salem does have expenses, and they have really been, you know, growing and utilizing the budget that they have in a very positive way. You know, I'm not originally from Salem, and I will say when I came to Salem, I have seen growth in Travel Salem and what they're trying to accomplish. You know, I don't know where they spend all of their money in every aspect. I do know that that we support them, you know, both financially and voluntarily, you know, and we very much so do our very best to hold them accountable for what they're doing as well, you know. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be the person that has the knowledge on where all of the dollars are spent. I manage the Hampton Inn and Suites, and I'm a member of, you know, of theirs.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, but I do think this question has to be raised and has to be confronted simply because of the jump that we made in funding last year, and I think that we ask department heads all the time to find within their budgets the money that they need to do the work that they do and the services that they provide. And if a department head knows that they need to make adjustments in their budget and in their operations in order to cover something like computer upgrades, software upgrades, et cetera, they have to do it within their set budget. They don't get to come back as a rule and get extra money for it. So I'm trying to think of the Travel Salem budget in light of the way we treat all of the departments within the city.
Sure, so very much so. I think that that's a good way to think about it. You know, I've been told about a multi-year plan that was approved last year, I believe. I'm not familiar with that plan. You know, I do know that this funding, this additional funding to what is proposed on the budget is it's not the entire bill for the website. They are using some of their privately generated funds, and they are utilizing what they can. It is very expensive being a destination marketing organization, and you know, I know that they are making every effort that they can with the dollars that they have. My fear, the reason I came here tonight is that we may be missing on a very high amount of potential revenue, not only for the businesses in our community, but also for our city and the TOT funds. You know, that family, that traveler is going to just bypass Salem, go right down to Eugene or right up to Portland, because they have a plethora of information right at their fingertips. They have a hard time finding the information for Salem that they need to really understand the great secrets that we have here that they would really enjoy, you know. And that's really my reason for being here this evening, is my concern about being able to capture that in such a prime time in the travel industry. Now is definitely not the time to hold back, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that. I did also pull the balance sheet and profit and loss statements for months in during 2014, and I realize that Travel Salem has been doing a good job of
Sure.
Raising money from sponsorships and advertising in the private sector. And but an organization with a $461,266 dollars on the balance sheet, that's assets, and liabilities is obviously the same amount of money. But it would seem to me that within $461,266 that some adjustments could be made within the expenditures to bring about this $36,000 that's needed to get the website, up to speed.
Sure, and I know, Mayor, that you've been a strong supporter of Travel Salem. You
and
very
I've been
much
on the
have been.
board, yeah.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I do not have the answer to what their assets are. I just don't have
Sure,
that information. Again, I'm a member.
Yeah,
and a
I
concerned
recognize
one.
it, and I really appreciate you coming, and I really sincerely appreciate your organization coming to Salem and establishing a lodging facility of the quality that you have. I don't mean to be grilling you personally.
It's quite all right.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So I have a number of other people who would like to ask questions. Member McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, thanks for coming down tonight. I'm
My
sure you
pleasure.
didn't expect
Sure.
the questions you got here from the mayor, all of which are on point, and some of which at some point I'd like to address, because I have some answers as the board rep on the from the council. Websites.
Yes.
In the industry, and I've got some knowledge of this, but
Absolutely.
Websites in the in tourism and lodging industry, are they playing a bigger role than they have in the past?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, we are trying to attract people who don't live here. And that, I mean, it's just. I work with a Hilton. We are a Hilton branded hotel, and Hilton puts millions and millions of dollars into their web advertising, of course, and we do benefit from those being a Hilton and the franchise that we are. But I 100% guarantee that they would not be putting that kind of money if they weren't seeing a return in their portfolio. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if everybody's aware, but the Hilton brand, tell them about your Connie Award real briefly.
Yeah, we are very excited about our Connie Award. The Connie Award is represented it's from the name Conrad Hilton. It's presented to the top 4 Hampton Inn and Suites in the world, and we're very proud to possess that award for our performance in 2014. That award is assessed on our guest satisfaction scores and our quality assurance scores as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there's how many in that? How many Hampton Inns in the? Yeah.
Hampton Inn and Suites globally, there's about 800. Hampton Inns in general, there's a little over 2,000 globally.
Yeah. So number 4 out of 2,000 in Salem.
We're very proud.
Thank you. Congrats.
Send your mother over to our place.
Member Benjamin, did you have a question?
It's probably a little bit more comment than question at this point. Hopefully, somewhere down the road, we can get somebody here that will be able to address budgeting issues and stuff like that. It obviously must have been an emergency. So having said that, Travel Salem, meeting with them, had good conversations. Some of the reasons why I ran for this position was to help business, not only existing, not only manufacturing, but also entrepreneurship. Agritourism can be huge here.
Yes.
It needs to be cultivated. Folks need to stand up and say, I'm going to make a business.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And working with Travel Salem and the cultural tourism, hand in hand, especially with the phone apps, because that's where it's going.
It is where it's
That's
at.
what I
Yeah.
do. So, having said that, that's why I ran, is to help that particular situation. It's going to bring a lot more jobs, more business.
Yes.
More people want to move here.
I agree.
More people working, making money, buying houses. More houses need to be built, more tax base for the city.
Yes.
So that's just my kind of point on that, is I really appreciate that the work that's been done. Some of the ideas I talked to them with, they were like, wow, where'd you come from? Can you speak for us? Because that was kind of the things, like mountain biking championships, some of these other functions that go on. But they really need to be maybe started by us, but I think they need to be also understanding that they can't come to the pod every year and get a new set of wheels so they can go running off and then come back and get another set of wheels and keep going. Hopefully they can start feeding themselves with the revenue they generate, if possible.
Absolutely, and
Thank you.
I'm sure they do appreciate that perspective as well.
Okay, did I have, Member Benars, did you have a question? Member Lewis, did you have a question? Okay, Member Bailey.
Just quickly, where is the specific line item budget? I couldn't make the figures I'm seeing here add up to the ones that the mayor was quoting.
That's because you don't have them. I apologize.
Oh, I see.
Well, I sought these out.
That's the way it works, huh? Okay, that's fine.
I sought these out, and I apologize. Actually, I think maybe maybe someone else can speak to.
Okay.
If you,
what you have
look at page 157 under Convention and Tourism Marketing.
That's what I thought. But
where
if that's it, that's fine.
If you were to add the approximate cost of the website of $36,000 to that figure, you would get the $771, which is being referenced.
Okay. And my other, just a comment is, so the message really is, it's not just about budget. What I'm hearing is that, in your opinion, working within the industry, that Travel Salem needs to ramp up its web presence, both online, mobile devices, and others, to compete effectively with not just people here in Oregon, but globally.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that needs to happen, absolutely.
And leadership there is aware, and just as it's a budget issue internally? Or
yes.
a priority issue? Or, I mean, that's not really for us to answer tonight, but that's the message, it sounds to me like.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't answer that question either.
Okay, Member McQuaid?
Well, I've got some answers. You don't have the microphone. And I don't have the microphone again.
So, do you have a question?
Do this? No, I do not have another question.
Okay, so if you want to hold those, Member Bennett, do you have a question?
No, I'm waiting for staff.
Okay. All right, we have one more person signed up to speak. So if there are no more questions for Mr. Merritt, thank you so much for coming down. And
My pleasure.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And
no, I enjoy this. Thank you very much.
All right, I have Scott Snyder.
Thank you very much, Chair Dickey and committee. Besides being the chairperson for the Cultural Promotion Tourism Advisory Board, I'm also the chairperson for the Lodging Association. And so I am here to speak specifically about the Travel Salem budget and request that you consider funding them for the original requested amount of the $771,568. In the past year, my personal hotel has had to do the very similar upgrades that Travel Salem is proposing in order to be visible mobily. We were getting significant pushback from our guests that they couldn't see our web information on their phones, on their iPads, and so we spent a significant investment to make that possible. I am also a very strong supporter of the Boy Scouts of America, and I was at a meeting last night up in Portland where they are doing a website, and they've been doing it for the last 3 months, where they've been facing challenges from prospective individuals looking at their website, getting frustrated, getting stuck and having to escape, and even members of the Boy Scouts looking for information getting lost in their website. So this is not something that is unheard of in the world today. It is a necessary aspect of technology. While this initial investment doesn't happen every year, regular content and maintenance will need to occur. Technology is always changing. You have to keep up or you get passed up, as Chris talked about. Travel Salem is plugged into what is working for other destination marketing organizations, and while we may be competing with Eugene and Portland, they do discuss successes and challenges. As the manager of the largest hotel in Salem, we collect over $500,000 a year in TOT. revenue for the city of Salem. Even though my hotel invests significant funds into marketing and direct sales efforts, we rely on the collaboration with Travel Salem to make us successful. We realize that the majority of the public funding is provided to Travel Salem through the TOT collected from Salem visitors. It's easy to say that Marion and Polk County should contribute more, or Travel Salem should seek more diversified funding options. But the reality is that the overwhelming majority of the guest room revenue that is generated is through Salem lodging facilities. Travel Salem wants to entice visitors to our area to spend their money in our shops, restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, and let them explore the regional attractions like Silver Falls, like Black Rock, like the many wineries and the area gardens that we have. Last year, as part of their contractual obligation formulated, they had a 3-year strategic plan. Travel Salem vetted this plan through their board of directors, through SALA. They presented it to the Tourism Advisory Board and ultimately reached approval from City Council last March. You may recall that the first year of the plan was designed, as the mayor mentioned, to develop new programs, the 2.5 FTE. Years 2 and 3 were to execute and mature the programs, and that's where we're at today, is second year. So this $36,000 is definitely earmarked, and it was part of the strategic plan. The Lodging Association is requesting that the Budget Committee gives Travel Salem the support to complete the plan and help to continue the incredible trend of occupancy and revenue climbing. SALA recognizes that all of the budget items and organizations that are making their pleas to you are vital, and therefore would suggest that we utilize a portion of the city manager's contingency fund as well as ending fund balance to help make these two important projects possible and not have to cut other areas of the budget. I do thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
All right, thank you. I have Member Bennett has a question.
I do. Scott, is this a #1 priority for Travel Salem? I mean, is this like the big deal for the year? It sounds like a very big deal. We're hearing from Hampton Inns and from you that really the quality of their service is measured by their website.
I can see where you would come to that conclusion, but the city investment last year, the increase that the mayor mentioned from 550 to 715, allowed that staff support, the amount of work that the shorthandedness, the amount of leads that they couldn't follow up on are now being aggressively attacked and being capitalized on. The marketing aspect, the way that people find Salem, as Chris mentioned, is through the web, and being pertinent, being up to date is important to that.
Yeah, I guess I want to understand, because we're not. The mayor has a copy of their budget, and she took the time to get it.
Mm-hmm.
It was not presented to us tonight, either by testimony from the executive director or anyone else, to give us a chance, if this is your #1 priority, to go through that budget and help you find that money, much like we do when we say we need another police officer because we can't follow up on leads. We'll have to go somewhere else looking for the money inside a closed system. Mm-hmm. And what I guess what I'm trying to understand is, if this is such a high priority, why there wouldn't have been a budgeting reorganization inside there to capture something as small as $36,000 in a $750,000 budget. You see what
I do, and I'm not on the board. I don't participate in those meetings. I do know that the 3-year strategic plan was presented to our organization, and we looked it over, tried to shake out things that maybe didn't make sense to the mission of Travel Salem, and ultimately helping to drive more travelers to Salem to stay. And this was one of those things that was identified, earmarked as being very, very important, the development of their website.
I'll wait and ask my staff questions then, because I want to know who's in charge of this budget and why it wasn't found in this budget. And should we have a copy of that budget? And we'll try to help you find the money.
Okay.
We can go for an extra night to help you through your budget.
Speak for yourself.
Are there other questions for Mr. Snyder? Yes, Benars.
So as chair of the Lodging Association, I'm hoping maybe you'll have this answer of other convention and tourist marketing associations throughout Oregon. Salem is getting about 17% of the funding from the total revenue that's coming in from the TOT. My question to you is, do you have any idea what other tourism agencies within the state of Oregon get, percentage-wise, perhaps?
You're talking of the total TOT, the 3.9, whatever that was, and
It's actually
travel Salem's portion.
4.254, yeah.
I do know we had made a presentation a couple of years ago, and the average is close to the 25% number. So
this is what I've heard before as well. I just was curious with the addition, if we funded the addition for the website, it brings it up to 18% of the total TOT. I'm not suggesting necessarily that it's tied. That has been proposed at one point, that it gets tied to the total amount of TOTs so that there's an incentive for them to produce, basically.
Definitely.
But that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mr. Snyder? Because I am hearing questions that might be more appropriate for staff, and also some discussion that I think people are waiting to do. So other questions for Mr. Snyder? All right, thank you so much
Thanks
for
a lot
coming
for your
down.
time.
Okay, so we will move into discussion and review, which includes questions of staff, but I don't think we're limited to that at this point.
Just on this issue, though, right?
On the cultural and tourism budget, yes. So are there questions for staff or comments or discussion? Okay, I've got Member Bennett, Member McCoy, Mayor Peterson. I saw a hand over here. No? Okay.
As I recall, the charter breaks out distribution of TOT funds. I'm just trying to remember how that works. What are the numbers like? Do you remember? In the amendment that created the 9 or 9.5% to the charter that created it, described a certain distribution of those funds.
The only distribution that I'm aware of is the 60-30-10 split.
Okay.
And that is actually tied directly to the grant applications.
Okay.
60% for facility operators.
Okay.
30% for special events and projects, and then 10% for capital improvement projects.
So the portion that's taken out by Travel Salem is just...
It's above that.
It's above that.
Yeah, so it's not a part of that 60-30-10 split.
Do you review their budget?
I do not review Travel Salem's budget. We do receive, as part of the TOT, Cultural and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board, we do receive copies of their annual budget, or their annual reports and quarterly reports.
But their budget doesn't?
But their budget doesn't always come through on that. That's, when it comes to budgetary time, that is a negotiation with the city manager and the contract administrator for Travel Salem.
Well, then you've seen their budget.
Yeah. I'm a little late coming to the table, I'm afraid. They do send quarterly reports and updates, but it's been some time since I've looked at it and can't speak articulately to the numbers that are in there.
I can answer it.
I'm not asking you yet. I know, but the problem is we're being asked to go into the city manager's budget based on a budget that has not been reviewed by our budget folks to see if it's even appropriate.
But what I will say is the request does come to the city manager's office for the total amount, and we take a look at that in line with all the other requests for funding into consideration and review it, and then a recommendation was made to fund the amount $735,420, which did not include the $36,000 for the website. I just want to address something that was brought up earlier with the percentage of the TOT funds. So if you look at the projected tax collections, the number, the 4.2, that includes the fund balance and some interest earnings and other revenues, is more in line of 22.7% of the TOT budget. So the other thing I want to note is, while I wasn't directly involved with this number decision, that if you look at the beginning fund balance of 982,710, and then turn the page on 159, see that there's 346,200 unappropriated, contingencies of 120,000. Assuming we don't use contingencies and everything goes as assumed and built into the budget, next year's beginning fund balance will be 466,200, which is a decrease of about 500,000 to the fund. So, you know, we're eating significantly into that beginning fund balance, even with the amount that's been granted under the request.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Member McQuaid.
Thank you. I don't have I have just a couple of things here. The budget went in at 771. It went to Linda Norris. Linda then sent it back, and it came back to the Travel Salem board at 736 or 5 or whatever it is. And then the cutout was the request for funding for the website upgrade. And so in a discussion at an executive committee meeting, this went back and forth. What do we do? How do we go? Or do we want to go about this? And the decision was made was to come to the budget committee and ask for 35,000 added to the budget. That's how this whole thing unrolled, and that was so that's where we're at. And that's why you haven't seen that budget. It was taken care of, and really they're just saying, okay, we see what we're going to get. We understand. We're asking for the 35 we didn't get back. That's what's going on here. Yeah. So, one other thing, one question I do have: what is an indirect cost allocation of almost 76,000? Where does that go?
So the indirect cost allocation is a allocation for administrative overhead costs that are applied to pretty much every fund. So it's going for any of the financial, administrative, city manager.
It's the overhead,
it's the overhead
for the staff
to
oversee the whole tot budget. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I would say one other thing, point of information. When you get into these areas, Clackamas County, because it's got a lot of hotels, but they're more in the county than any incorporated city, they have a $3 million budget for their tourism promotion. Washington County, sort of the same thing. They're at 2.8. Travel Lane County is about 2 million. And then you've got the giant, they're up north at 30 million, or 20 million, I'm sorry, a year. So that's where we're at. So if you look at that, in fact, I'm going tomorrow to talk to, in Tillamook, to a group, and Tillamook just passed, for the first time here in the last year, a tot tax. And I think it's 6 or 7%. They're generating almost $3 million out of that a year, but because it's after 2003, 70% has to go to tourism funding. So they're getting, Little Tillamook County's got 2.2 million that they're going to put into tourism funding, and we're sitting here with 750,000 or 35,000. To put it in, I think, in perspective of who we're competing with and the amount of money they've got versus what we're using to fund it, with a total tot revenues of 3.2 million, it's much lower than the people really of our size that we're competing with for this. You know, we're not competing with Portland. We're competing with the people that come to Portland and leave it and go out in the valley or wherever to visit. That's who we're competing with for those folks once they get here. So, you know, put that in mind, and really, to me, the issue with the website is, real frankly, it's what drives certainly lodging and tourism today. And we've got an antiquated website that's, you know, probably only 4 or 5 years old, but in terms of technology and the ability to drive that message to the phones and to the tablets, it doesn't do it. You can't read it. It's not legible, and so the folks aren't using it. And phones right now, it's up to 50% of anybody that's tapping for information, it's coming on a phone or a tablet. So the issue here is to upgrade that, and frankly, when they write that budget, the Travel Salem budget, and I've sat through 3 of these now, I guess, it's basically a zero budget. You know, they're down to, here's what they've got, and it's current programs, and the mayor led the battle to fund that back to a level it had been pre-recession, which we did, which was sorely needed. But the fact is, it's still a zero-based budget. If they have 700, whatever it is, 35,000, they're going to spend 735 on the things they do. And frankly, the final thing is, and I think the mayor is very right when she reads the contract, and I was in a meeting with Linda when she was still here in February, holding the feet to the fire of the Travel Salem staff, basically saying, no, you can't spend that money on that or that. That money is going to promote Salem, and it's not going to promote Polk County or Marion County. It's here to promote the city of Salem. Held their feet to the fire and, you know, made sure that the money that's coming from the city to them is being used to promote the city itself. So a lot of the other things they do, they're either doing it with the extra income they have or the money they're getting from the 2 counties. So do I think it's needed? Yes, I do. If you want this folk to be competitive, I mean, in the future, if you really want them to be competitive with the people they have to compete with, you're going to have to look at the amount of money you're giving them, because right now you're sort of handcuffing that staff. I mean, what they've got's fine and better than what they did have, but when you're competing with 3 million, 2.8, 2 million, and hell, 2 million in Tillamook County, they're just, you know, they got a third of what their competitors are dealing with, and the results are going to be what they are. And even with that, the TOT is going up for a variety of reasons. So, enough said.
Okay, Mayor Peterson.
Yeah, thank you. There are a couple points I want to clear up or at least illuminate. I know Councilor Bennett just recently said something about that their budget of 713,000 or 700 and whatever they're getting from us this year.
735,420 is the budget for this year.
14-15 was 713,000. But actually their total income is almost $1 million, $942,471 projected for the year 14-15, because they received money from Marion County. They received $100,000 from Marion County and $15,000 from Polk County. And then they do receive money from memberships and advertising, sponsorships, et cetera. But this is almost $1 million operation. And so I just want to be clear that we understand that that's the pot of money that they are administering, and out of that, I believe firmly that they should allocate the administrative costs that it takes. And if computer, internet is the way to reach people, that should be a fundamental part of the budget. And I've got the whole budget here, but I just think they need to go back in and look at the budget and see how they might differently spend the money, if indeed, and I agree, the computer and the internet and social media are the way to reach people. I want to also mention, I know Councilor Benars talked about the percentage. We have to go back and remember that the thing that drives all of this on the TOT budget is a measure that was passed in this community for TOT funds. First of all, it established that the hotels and motels would be able to collect the money. And secondly, the voters very clearly specified what that money would be used for, how that money would be allocated. There is a percentage allocation that is different in every single city or county that has a TOT fee, because each one has an individual local ordinance or chapter or prescription. We live under the prescription that the residents of the city of Salem voted on, and that's why our percentage to Travel Salem as a tourism cultural organization is different than other percentages. And so this constant repetition of comparing that we're only giving them a certain percentage when Clackamas County gets a certain percentage and Tillamook gets a certain percentage, it's irrelevant. We are doing what we are doing by law. by prescription, by vote of the people of the city of Salem. Now, if somebody has a problem with that percentage, go back out to the public and have a different kind of tot tax, have a different kind of allocation. That would be fine. But to always beat up on the city council because we're not giving enough percentage to Travel Salem, I think is so unfair. And so I just wanted to really make that known. It's time to stop being lured by the percentages that others have. Yes, I'd love to be able to give them as much as Clackamas County or wherever else. But our voters, our residents said, you're going to spend a certain percentage on parks and entranceways. You're going to spend a certain amount on the conference center. You're going to spend a certain amount on the destination tourism organization. And you're going to give a certain amount of money to organizations in the community. And that's what the top board also oversees, are these grants to cultural and heritage organizations, which I think is very important in our community. So that's just my 2 cents worth on why we do this the way we do it.
Member Benars.
It just happens to be on the next one up. I do appreciate your comments, Mayor Peterson. I made my comments because I'm looking at what we're doing. I consider cultural and tourism a traded sector business, something that we've had a lot of conversation of within this council. And I'm only looking at what are other communities, how are we comparing to other communities. Not that we have to be the same as every other community, but if we're competing for those traded sector dollars to come into this community, it's the reality of it. I do believe, such as we have to live within our budget, they need to live within their budget. And if all we're going to give them is $735, then they're going to have to live with it. And if they need to redo their website, they may have to cut a staff in order to fund that software improvement. I did want to clarify, I really raised my hand initially for 2 reasons. One was, thank you, Deputy or City Manager, for correcting me. I went back and did my percentages back over. As Councillor McCoy had mentioned, no, I'm sorry, it was Scott Snyder had mentioned the 25% roughly. So I wanted to go back and make sure that my numbers were the same. Currently will be, with the new budget, it's a 22.7% of the TOT income will be going to the marketing. And if we gave them that extra money, it would be 23.8%, an 8% increase over what they're getting today in income. So with that, the only other question I really had of staff at this point was, and I don't remember if this would be prudent or not, but why wasn't the executive director here? It seems like it would be one of those times when she'd want to be present. Just a thought for maybe next year? Thank you, that's all I have.
Member Berger.
Question for staff. Ending fund balance seems to, well, it's going in one direction. I'm wondering if there's any policy on this fund. I'm curious, I'm getting a shake. No.
No, there is no current policy requiring a minimum fund balance, but we do try to keep it around the $300,000 to $500,000 balance.
Okay, and I guess from my perspective, in certain funds, ending fund balance is incredibly critical. This one, it seems to be a little bit more, it has a specific purpose. Maybe an ending fund balance being quite as large isn't as critical because a lot of those costs can just go away. You can just not fund the grants the next year.
Correct. You'd see a hit to the grants, or you would see a reduction in some of the other events that are being put on by the city, or changes in costs for, or changes in allocation for parks or historic buildings, et cetera.
Right. And it seems to me that the point of these funds are to be spent and are to promote Salem. So holding on to funds for the next year, I don't necessarily is quite the purpose. I can see some reason to have some ending fund balance just for stability reasons, but the money is there to be used to promote Salem, and if they're not promoting Salem, then they're not serving their purpose sitting in an account.
If I could make a couple of comments, that's part of the reason you've seen the decrease going from, over 1.2 million down. And one source of stability that ending fund balance provide is with revenue projections. You never know when something like 2008 is going to occur, and all of a sudden travel comes to a halt, and you've got certain commitments that you made contractually or grants that you've got to fulfill those obligations throughout the year. So you need to make sure that you've got some cash balance on hand to be able to fulfill those obligations in case something unanticipated occurs.
Member McQuaid?
So I have a question on the fund balance. If you look back, I'm going from beginning cash balances. I'm assuming that's the ending fund balance from the year before, right? So, it went from 654 and 1112 up to 881 to 1.1 and now down to 982. So the 982, other than last year, is the biggest ending fund balance in the last 5 years. But my question is there, or, I mean, I'm not sure it's a policy, but is there sort of a philosophy that it's a percentage of whatever the total resources are, Casey?
We do not have an adopted policy.
Because I'm looking, I'm eyeballing it, it looks like it's about the same percentage.
The crystal ball is at 300,000 to 500,000 where we're aiming to get, and a lot of that has to do with, I guess, more of an analysis of what your commitments are for the outgoing year and what you need to retain in reserve in order to meet that, given revenues that come in well below those projections.
So when you say 300,000 to 500,000 additional, or that's what you want the fund balance?
At the end of the year. So if all of our assumptions hold true at the end of this year, the beginning fund balance for the following year would be 466,200.
So I would then say the difference there is the money we're spending on the parks.
So that's
the 200, and the whatever is what's making that big dent in that.
That's correct. That's part of it.
Okay.
And
so is that a one-off? That's a little more unique, those big amounts, right?
Right, and also recognizing that in order to retain competitive with some of our softball tournaments, which attract heads and beds, that we're going to have to make some investment there, and this is a partial step to getting that direction.
So, but is that a little bit of a unique year? I mean, just looking,
so yeah,
we haven't had a drop like that.
That's correct, and using some of those for one-time needs and expenses.
Correct. Most of those
actually, there's a multiple-year plan for Wallace.
Yes, we're looking at the reason why we're bringing down that beginning fund balance, and the way we're doing it is for one-time items such as the Minto Brown Island Trail improvements, and then the Marine, Wallace Marine Center, sports field complex improvements, as a way of bringing down the fund balance, but not wanting to make sure it's not an ongoing commitment that we can't sustain because the growth in the tenancy and occupancy tax isn't able to keep up with that.
Member Anderson.
That's a good segue into my question. The TOT revenue history and your estimate of next year, upon what do you base that, and is it firm, is it not? Because it could be more or it could be less, of course, but I wonder how is that a conservative estimate? How did you arrive at that estimate?
So when we do a 5-year forecast on the transient occupancy tax, and what we're looking at is one, historical, obviously, and then two, where we're at currently. Since the tourism industry has started to pick back up, there's been two things that affect the transient occupancy tax. That's the initial price of your overnight stay, which as your cost goes up, the percent goes up, and so you receive more transient occupancy tax due to that. The other thing that happens is if you have more people coming in, more rooms at night, more room nights, then you're going to have more revenue as well. So those two things don't always go hand in hand in the same direction, and so you really have to, it's really a guessing game as to how much increase you anticipate for the next year. The last 2 years, I think last year we received about a 12% increase year over year in the transient occupancy tax. What that is attributed to is both room nights as well as a slow increase in the annual cost of the rooms. This year we're currently at about 10%. So we're not as high as we were previously, but there's still there's plenty of room nights available out there. It really depends on, also how many overnight stays there are, how many events are being put on that draw people in that are going to stay for more than 1 or 2 nights. So as far as going back to the forecast, in this forecast we anticipated about a 7% increase year over year for the revenues, and as long as it holds true, then there's sufficient to cover our needs.
Thank you.
Member Lewis and then Member Bennett.
I just want to question this forecast period. Does it include the completion of the bridge to Minto Island?
Yes, the 5-year forecast going out,
Yeah.
or you're talking about the current fiscal year?
Well, I'm wondering if you factored in that in your anticipation in your projections. I would think that would, I would think that would have an effect.
It is, as far as the money that's budgeted currently for like the Minto Brown Island trail improvements, those are one-time monies or short-term. In other words, we're looking at a 2 or 3 year.
No, I'm talking about the forecast for occupancy.
The forecast for occupancy.
Yeah, I would expect once that bridge is completed, there'd be a few people coming to look at it.
You would anticipate more, more travel people coming, more, as if events are put on, such as marathons or whatever.
Is that in your 5-year forecast?
We currently estimated 7% as the base for 2 years, for the next 2 years, and then I think we go down to about 5% because we're not sure exactly how much of an increase that'll be.
So you think people are going to stay away?
Well, we've had such an increase in the last 2 years that we're not sure that's sustainable. The average or historical has been 8%, 7 to 8% growth year over year, which is right now only $200,000-$300,000 a year increase in your taxes year over year, or in the revenues year over year.
Well, we have heard tonight that there's an increase nationally for hotel stays, so maybe it's a short-term phenomena, maybe not. I would be thinking that one event here in this city, that bridge to Minto Island, would definitely cause an effect to hotel night stays.
Yep, and you're also going to have to look at the seasonality, the time of the year when people are going to be wanting to go across that bridge or coming to visit. Maybe, summertime is obviously the highest amount. You have to take a look at how much room capacity there is in the city to identify, how big of an impact that's really going to have. If you're in the summertime, you've already got maximum volume, you're not going to be able to increase that anymore because you've already maxed out the number of room nights available.
Okay, Member Bennett?
Thank you. I think that's a really good point you're making, Councilor Lewis, in terms of the work we're doing and the investment we're making with the Cultural and Tourism Fund for growth in this fund. I mean, and at least stability, if nothing else. I just want to just do 2 things. This is not the only marketing fund we have in this budget. I mean, we've got the other $300,000 that's going on. And I think, I really get this $35,000, but having served on their executive committee at Travel Salem and chaired the top board for a number of years, and then served on the budget committee for more, I want to make just one comment because it's such a different evening than most evenings involving the TOT fund. What a good job Scott Snyder and the top board have done, because the only discussion we're having is over Travel Salem getting $35,000 instead of a room full of people arguing over $1,000 to $7,500 grants. It really tells me they did a heck of a job in their scoring this year and they got the thing right. And I think that given what we often run into, we spend a lot of time on Travel Salem, but usually we spend a lot of time on really the minutia of this budget instead of this. So I think they did a great job.
Member Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I wasn't disappointed with this budget again this year.
Yeah.
It's typically a real strange budget element inside of the city of Salem because it's intermeshed with things all over the place, and a lot of members have more knowledge than others in some of those realms, and so for new folks and what have you, tend to be glassy-eyed, wondering what the heck people are talking about because it is so different than everything else. And just to state that even with that and the shifts that we've made over the last several years that have really improved the functionality of this, I think there will always just be a ton of discussion on it because we can.
Yeah. There's actually money here as opposed to the rest of the
There's the point.
Okay, on that note, I see no other hands raised. Thank you very much. Thank you to those of you who came down. We will move on. We have 2 more budgets to get through this evening, and we will need to get through them because we added our extra meeting next week because we put some off last week. So we're going to plow through and get through the next 2 budgets. So now we have review of the city manager's budgets.
So good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Budget Committee. For the 3rd consecutive week, I have the opportunity to present a portion of the city's budget to you, this time dealing with that which falls under the city manager's office. The city manager's office is comprised of the library, which you heard from earlier today, as well as the facilities division and the office of the city manager. I'd like to begin by talking briefly about the city manager's office, which includes a proposed budget of $1.48 million and authority for 9.5 FTE. This slide speaks to some of the city manager's office functions in support of the city that we have the privilege of serving. The city manager reports to the city council and is responsible for the management and administrative functions of city government. The city manager oversees all city departments and operations, leading major projects and stakeholder processes, and fulfilling the goals and directives established by the city council. The city manager's office also coordinates on behalf of our volunteers, including the mayor and city council, and coordinates staff support to more than 20 advisory boards, commissions, or councils. Our office is also the home of the city's budget office, and I must say that a team of 3 in a city with a budget of over $400 million is highly efficient, and we're very fortunate to have the capable staff that we do there. They help support our city to ensure that we're on stable financial ground, and they do this through the development of the annual budget, through long-term forecasting, and through regular monitoring of both our revenues and expenditures. Our office is also responsible for negotiating and managing franchise agreements with utility companies who operate in the city's rights-of-way. And the revenue stream from these agreements account for $16.4 million, the 2nd largest source to the city's general fund. The city provides a response to complaints of discrimination and ensures ongoing compliance with the Civil Rights Act and other federal laws such as the Americans with Disabilities Act. As we look forward to this coming year, we envision continued improvements in our communications and in our ability to customize the budget information to further the overarching goals of the city. The city improved communications with residents, businesses, and visitors through more frequent use of social media outlets and adding a monthly news show on Capital Community Television. In 14-15, a citywide Facebook page was created to augment the individual department social media effort. And the Community Connections newsletter was recently reformatted and increased to weekly distribution to reduce the printing costs and provide more timely information to residents. During 14-15, as the franchise administration duties were transferred to the budget office, some funding became available for a position to focus more on public communications. And in 15-16, we're recommending half-time FTE. So we've taken the full-time position and parceled out a lot of the responsibilities, some lying in the budget office and others within other staff in the city manager's office, and we'll be reducing actually a half-time position, and that position will focus on public relations and communications. We also, over the course of the past year, went through a very lengthy process to select a budget software to replace our vintage 1990 software. The new software is on schedule to be fully implemented in May, and it will increase our capacity by automating a lot of the current manual processes and provide us the opportunity to easily consolidate financial data and produce special reports. As we have discussed before, the city's financial stability remains our primary concern as revenues do not keep pace with operational costs. We have to continually evaluate and reassess our fiscal status and respond accordingly to ensure the delivery of services well into the future. We anticipate a leadership transition in the coming year. Once the City Council completes its recruitment for a city manager, we will look to appoint as well a permanent urban development director. Our office continues to support the development and implementation of the Council's policy. The office will advise boards and commissions, work with department heads on the completion of major projects, such as the Minto Island Bridge. We'll plan for long-term infrastructure needs, such as a new police facility, and work on the retention and strategic recruitment of traded sector companies to grow Salem's economy. And that concludes presentation of the City Manager's office budget.
All right, Member Bennett.
There's no public on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were right. There is no public signed up to speak.
One of, on the city manager's office, okay. One of the things proposed, you mentioned, was cutting a staff position in that office by half. And it's the part right now related to public information. One of the council goals over the past couple of years has been public information, and a common theme of council discussions. I'm trying to understand why that goal is best served by cutting that position in half.
So right now we have a seasonal employee fulfilling that position. It's not a full-time position. In evaluating the current demands of the position and the needs there, I really feel like if we can attract a qualified candidate to apply for a half-time position, that's more equally suited for that. We also have several public information officers scattered throughout the city. That's not their sole function. Angie Hedrick, for example, in the police department, who all work together. We've got a strategic public communications group that convenes and discusses ways to improve. We're looking to improve our website to make it more community-centric. We're looking at more applications for electronic payment to be more electronic solution-oriented. So I think we're doing a lot of things in a lot of different areas to improve that goal.
Well, let me, just as a member of the Council of Budget Committee, diffusion of services like that does not mean they're being done better. And one of the things I've noticed over the past year or so, whatever it's been, has been much more focused. And I think the coverage, at least in the printed press and I think on the radio, has actually improved. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that the press releases I get from Hendricks or Okada or from anyone else at the city aren't appreciated, but I saw press releases, public information going out about things well beyond, like road closures, gunfights at Kmart or Walmart, or, where it really makes sense inside of their activity area, but it had a broader application. And, I'm worried. I just tell you that quite honestly. I get worried because we have such terrible coverage from our local press in terms of just the quality of it as well as the amount of it. They've taken on the philosophy of all the news that fits around the tire ads. Yeah, that appears to be all they can come up with in terms of the quantity of coverage. And we have helped them, and I'm worried we will lose that position that we have developed. So I just share that with you. I don't know if anyone else on the Budget Committee agrees with me. This has been a very difficult row to hoe and get to even this point. So cutting back, bringing in a new city manager with a staff of 5.8. the guy's going to be, the person is going to be,
Thank you.
excuse me, is going to be incredibly lonely in that office. That office is so understaffed. I just worry about it.
I'm not going to argue against cuts to our department. Just in looking at the overall condition of the city's budgets and currently the amount of time that's being dedicated toward that effort, where we have seen improvements, it seemed as though a half-time position was more appropriate.
Well, okay. I don't agree, but I just see
that.
this goal. I've seen this city long enough to see public information in, public information out, two guys doing public information, no guys doing public information, you know, and here we go. This, to me, this is how it hits me after all these years, is here we go again. This particular area is so hard, I think, for management to understand what a public information officer does, and I worry that it just looks like, I hope this is your management decision, obviously, but I hope this isn't a short-sighted decision that leaves us, again, back behind the 8 ball in terms of staying ahead of the news cycle and presenting the public with the information they need to have to understand what we do and what's going on down here. That has been one of the biggest criticisms we've run into. So if you think we can do it with 1/2 less person, that's your judgment. But I just don't see how that works. In all honesty, I just don't see how that works.
All right, I have a question and a comment, and I have several others who would like to speak as well. So my question is, and I share those exact concerns that Councilor Bennett just raised. My question is, does the city have a strategic communications plan? And if so, a half-time person can execute that plan to make sure the information gets disseminated to the public?
We have a strategic communications group that's been convening for some time.
But is there a plan, an actual plan?
Work on a plan, but we do not have a plan at this point.
So I say we need that. You know, it sounds like there's a group working on that, but I think a halftime may not get the information out to the public, especially given, you know, our limited resources. We have things coming down the pike where we're going to be out there asking the public for their resources. A small investment in someone who can accurately communicate to the public in a variety of mediums, in the way people communicate today in the year 2015 will go a long way in getting public support. I mean, we want to make sure the public does know what we're out there doing, and I think investment in communication is really, really important. And now I have Member Anderson.
Thank you. I would echo Member Bennett and the chair's comments, and let me move that into another area that I maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. Right now, the deputy city manager position and the salary and everything else that goes with that is unfilled. Do we anticipate that position will remain unfilled during some portion of the next fiscal year?
I would anticipate so, yes, but depending on how quickly the process goes.
So are we talking a month or two? Are we talking maybe, you know, a quarter of that? Because, and is that not being there, that position not being filled, is that reflected in the budget or not?
It's budgeted as being filled for the entire year.
Okay, so the reason I asked that has partly to do with what the 2 other members asked, but also we want 101,000 for a new police officer. We want, I don't know what it was, 13,000 for graffiti. We may or may not want 35,000 for Travel Salem. So we're adding all these things to our wish list, but we don't have any way to cut the budget yet. And perhaps this is a way that, I don't know how much that would be, but perhaps that could be on the wish list to not have to pay, which then might allow us to fund some of these things that are on our wish list, you know, without any way to do it so far.
And I understand where you're coming from. Hopefully you're not advocating to cut my former position, but that's right. But we do need a certain amount of vacancies or savings in order to meet the savings target that's anticipated to meet the fund balance that we're projecting at the end of the year. And so savings derived, if it's a month, if it's two, however long, would help us to meet that target. Otherwise, we'll look to reduce elsewhere.
Otherwise, excuse me?
We may have to look to reduce elsewhere just to make sure we come in with our target.
Right, Member Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you hit on exactly where I was going to go, because I think from the year that I came on council and goal sessions, we need a communication strategy. We need a communication strategy. We need a communication strategy, and continued. Even before we had a pre-meeting on another subject tonight, prior to the budget committee, and we discussed the lack of the city to actually tell people the good things we do. We go out and ask them for money. We never, because we're so busy doing other things, don't toot our own horn when we just reduced interest rate by refinancing the Section 108 bonds and what have you as well. The public will never know we saved them several $100,000 on that by working with outside agencies. We're starting to see that come up now, and I've been seeing improvement, and I'm really skeptical on starting to go the other way as well. So we may want to have a conversation on that at the next goal setting session as well.
Mayor Peterson.
Yeah, I would just like to encourage you to maintain the position, a full-time position, because as a mayor, I'm out in the community all the time, and I am hearing from people that they're hearing more about what's going on at the city. And I think that communication level is very, very important. And I just can't tell you what a difference that makes when the public is aware of what we're doing and has clear communication from us. Really helps.
Member McQuaid.
I remembered. Casey, so I heard you in the answer there that you've got, I think what I heard was you have budgeted assumed vacancies? Yes. Is that what I heard?
Well, over the course of transitions with people retiring or filling, there's a natural tendency to be some attrition and then savings generated during the time that you're attempting to fill those positions. And
what's that number?
What's the exact number?
Well, what's the ballpark number?
I can't tell you the exact
number. It's a secret?
No, not because it's a secret, because
I'm curious because you said you need that number to make your ending balance.
2.5% of the total budget.
Really?
The savings target.
Wow.
Well, and some of that is unfilled positions, others just not buying.
Yeah. So it would be, I'm hearing a voice in the background that it's about 35,000 for the city manager's office.
That's the general fund?
That was the city manager's office.
No, I mean the 2.5% was of every department?
Of the general fund.
Of the general
it's
fund.
roughly $106 million budget, so yeah. 2.6 million.
Member Benars.
Well, not to be the social media horse to death, but I want to reiterate the same thing that Councillor Bennett and a few others have reiterated already this evening. This was a goal, getting the word out, getting communication out was a extremely high goal, as it was last year's budget process. The year before, it has been at our goal setting sessions. I'm not going to tell you how to run the city manager's office. I don't know. I just know it's extremely high priority to me. I do find it interesting that in many ways we were just talking about the cultural and tourism communication via internet being the same issue that we're kind of talking about here too. Trying to get the message out, trying to communicate. I continuously hear that from my neighborhood associations and from people that I talk to. I'm working hard to communicate. I need some avenues and I need some help. So you do what you need to do, but I really would love to see that funding for that extra half.
Member Benjamin.
whenever I have go to a neighborhood association meeting, the first thing I say when I step up is, has anybody been to the City of Salem website? Raise your hand. This is not a neighborhood association meeting, because there wouldn't be any. And I know I've talked about at IT, I've had this discussion about, and I know we're all trying to get there, the city is, in regards to making that website more community-centric, you said? I like that. And hopefully maybe have apps and stuff like that we can download. With that Walmart situation, I have an app that brings up the police department's communications, and it showed me an alert. I looked to see what it was, and that's what it was. Also, Baltimore popped up. I'd like to see something like that. So in any event, moving forward, with cutting back a person down to part-time staffing, might be a little soon, but I don't see it out of the realm of possibility, because once we have these platforms in place, then they can almost run themselves, and then different departments can contribute, and then it starts pushing it out. And I'm thinking that's probably what you're thinking, but...
Well, it also has to do with the fact that right now we've got a part-time temporary employee working the position at an average of close to 20 hours per week. And I think we're being fairly effective now with what we're doing, looking at the overall budget and knowing that we had a target and we're trying to come in where that target was.
Sure, sure. And then that person is getting tooled up with IT, and so we got our Facebook being monitored, Twitters, whatever else we've got going on our website is getting worked on with IT. And so feasibly a part-time, seasonal, whatever, would be able to maintain those, you know, but I don't know if it's too soon to be cutting that back. And I kind of echo the rest of the council. Thank you.
Yes, Member Cartwright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's more of a comment than a question. We talk about the website for Travel Salem, and our own website is just as old-fashioned as theirs. You may have missed the Google announcement just the other day that they've readjusted their search algorithm, and they give preference to mobile websites. So somebody looking for a search term that may in the past have brought up Salem will not bring up Salem necessarily anymore, because other websites that are mobile friendly will get preference. So I would love to see our website upgraded.
That is in process, and you'll see that before the next budget year.
That's all.
Okay, we'll move on to the facilities budget.
The Facilities Division manages over 2.1 million square feet at 86 separate city facilities, including the Civic Center, fire stations, parking structures, shop buildings, and historic houses. Last year, the division completed over 3,300 work orders and 105 projects. As you can see, the division has 27 FTE and a budget of nearly $3.8 million. The slide breaks down the division by section. The building system operations include HVAC, generators, fire systems, elevators, etc. The building maintenance services include 6-day-a-week service to parkade cleaning, 5 days a week for services such as structural work, siding, roofs, painting, and general carpentry. Asset management includes oversight of new construction, capital projects, and tenant improvements, as well as reconfiguration, relocation, and space planning. Custodial services is a 6-day-a-week service at 23 locations, serving more than 345,000 square feet. This slide demonstrates some of the significant changes that are continually evolving and are part of the future outlook that I will speak to on the next slide. As an upgrade to the city's computerized maintenance management system, which provides mobile access to building system information, the city has been able to more readily schedule long-term preventive maintenance and reduce response times and the need to travel from building to building to investigate maintenance issues. This is another way that we're leveraging technology to become more efficient in our operations. We've also reprogrammed the building automated system as another operational efficiency to be able to automate our systems and control them remotely. This is a good time to mention that these technological improvements, as well as others that were funded through the stimulus grants in 2009, have helped us reduce energy consumption by 41% over fiscal year 2009 levels. In today's cost, that's about $180,000 this year. The division is looking to further expand the use of technology to more efficiently operate buildings, including the addition of an energy management module for the current system. And finally, the division is continually evaluating and adjusting as needed the schedules of the workforce and staff assignments to reduce tenant disruptions and increase productive work time. The shop's facilities maintenance budget is part of the City Services Fund and provides for the centralized management of projects at the shop's complex. Excuse me. Including the maintenance and repair of outside areas. Funding is provided by city departments with building services inside the complex. I should mention that our facilities manager, Ty Godfrey, is here this evening, and he does a fantastic job, he and his staff, with the resources they have to try to keep our buildings in decent repair. He's available for specific questions that you might have regarding the facilities division. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Or I see no one signed up for public comment. Are there any questions about the facilities budget? Okay, we will move on. Thank you. Did you have a question, Mayor? Okay,
I'm sorry, I do have a question, but I'm getting mixed up on my pages, and I'm wondering where I just read about the city shops. I'll find that somewhere, and maybe someone can direct me to what page that was on. Is that, I guess that's, I had a question about the city shops, but now I can't find the narrative that
Mayor, it's
talks
page
about
241.
that. Page what?
241.
Oh, thank you. In book one? Yes. I really apologize. All right, thank you, everybody. So I see under Shops Facilities Maintenance Program that there is a cost allocated for $79,740 to contribute to a safe work environment for the multiple city services located at the City of Salem Shops Complex by managing centralized projects and the associated expenses to maintain and repair the outside areas of the complex. Could somebody please explain to me what that means? And does this mean that maybe our shops are going to start having some repairs and upgrades?
I would like to say yes to the latter. However, what it does mean is that there are common expenses to the entire complex, such as recently, as part of our DEQ permitting, we had to make some changes for stormwater to the complex. And those types of projects would come from this fund. Or we had an emergency alert system for the entire complex. That's also comes out of this fund that all of the various departments that operate there contribute into.
Okay. I know I know it seems like I'm beating a dead horse, but I really do hope that we're able, in fact, I really do want to push for at least more of a specified plan as to how we're going to upgrade the environment there at the shops and what kind of a timeline. I'm sure it's probably also in the CIP, and I probably need to just be directed toward that and read that more carefully. But I just, year after year, we go through this budget, and I just always feel like the shops are not going to receive anything different than what they've had. And I'm just hoping that there will be some light at the end of the tunnel on this.
I completely agree, and I'm looking for the same light.
Member Nanke.
And in that same light, having had a CIP discussion the other day, that's 5 years and only things that have funding. So I would assume there's nothing included in the CIP on that, correct?
Well, Mr. Godfrey, do you want to speak to? There's nothing I'm aware as far as CIP projects within that for the shops complex, but we do repair and make investments into the city shops.
Ty Godfrey, Facility Services. We do have a plan, Mayor, that's going to allocate around $190,000 this year for the shops. We have 3 items in the budget on page 24 at the bottom for some roof repairs and some window replacements at Shop 2. And then our staff are going to go around and do maintenance and repair to the exterior of the buildings, painting, siding repair, dry rot repair, everything we can possibly do to increase their longevity. As far as the CIP goes, in the unfunded portion, we have identified major capital projects, but it's just a matter of funding.
Okay, well, I'm heartened to hear what you just said, and you referred to a page number. What was that?
24.
24 in Book 1?
Book 1, yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I won't take your time while I look that up, but I'm pleased to hear that. I'm very pleased. Good. Thank you.
All right, mayor and council budget.
Budget for another counselor?
As you're,
This is where we increase our wages.
that's right.
Yeah, really.
As a majority of you are familiar with this budget, I'll spend just a very short amount of time here. The total budget is $228,000. Of that, $0 is in personal services for 0 budgeted FTE. So we will double your pay in this budget. And the primary expenditures for the budget are for professional services that affect the entire city, such as the services that we receive from our legislative consultants, the hearings officer, and our external financial auditor. In speaking to some of the significant changes, there's some new faces here who weren't a part of this. They may have been part of the committee, but not in the same chair. In January, we had 4 new councilors come into office. In February, the council started to review their goals, and we're in the goal-setting process. Those goals will inform the development of next year's budget and priorities for 2016. The council works to incorporate community perspectives into critical issues, as we've recently discussed. You've highly encouraged staff to improve our communications with the community, and as an additional engagement effort, the council recently approved a Blue Ribbon Task Force comprised of councilors and residents to look into the issue of future police facility. They've finalized their work and will present recommendations to the council next month. So with that, I will allow time for questions. And
Member Benars.
With a budget of $228,000, I just wanted to assure people who are watching at home that, in all seriousness, none of us in this room, none of us that are in these chairs down here in the Budget Committee get paid 1 penny for any of the work that we do. That money goes, as you said, to other things. I just wanted to assure people that we don't get paid.
I apologize for
that's okay. Ever.
Member Berger.
I would just like to take the opportunity to thank the mayor and the council for serving. I get to know all of you on the campaign trail as well as here at the Budget Committee, and you guys don't get paid anything, and you work very long hours, and us on the Budget Committee get a short snippet of that. You know, staying up really late last week was hard on me. But I know you guys do it like 5 times a week, so I really do appreciate that, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more budget to get through, and that is our community services budget. So sorry, hopefully it won't be too late tonight, but we'll get through, and we do have someone signed up to speak to that budget as well.
Chair Dickey, Mayor Peterson, members of the Budget Committee, good evening. I'm Glenn Gross, the Community Development Director. Tonight is my pleasure and privilege to present the proposed budget for our department for the fiscal year 2015-16. My presentation will include our 3 divisions: planning, neighborhood enhancement, and building and safety. I'll also present the Public Art Fund. I'd like to also acknowledge Brady Rogers is here with me tonight, and Rabi Tamerhulit, and Chris Snyder, and they will be happy to help me answer your questions if they arise. Planning and neighborhood enhancement are part of the general fund, and combined, they represent almost 60% of our department's staffing. The planning division is comprised of current and long-range planning, and the neighborhood enhancement division is made up of code compliance, multifamily licensing, and neighborhood and youth services. With the nicer weather, unfortunately, comes an increase in the number of code compliance complaints, including grass and weeds. We have provided a report to you at your request on the effectiveness of our approach using seasonal help to augment our existing staff. We have been able to get a jump start for this year, and our new seasonal employee will be in the field on her own, responding to complaints next week. Our current planning staff has been able to keep up with a steady but moderate increase in land use applications, and we've seen this increase now consistently over the past couple of years. Our neighborhood and youth services staff do a great job at leveraging our limited funding by identifying and maintaining partnerships with a variety of agencies and service organizations. And we also provide support to our 18 recognized neighborhood associations and work to connect them with available resources. The recently completed land needs studies found that we have enough land in the urban growth boundary to meet our forecasted needs for employment and housing land, and we are not planning an expansion at this time. However, we do have a shortage of land zoned for multifamily, and we will need to begin to address this in the upcoming year. Also, we will soon begin a new planning project, an exciting one, for the State Street corridor. Funded in large part by a state grant, this project seeks to revitalize a section of State Street into a more walkable and vibrant mixed-use corridor. And now for building and safety. This division is funded solely on the revenue that it receives from permits and licenses. Good stewardship of this fund requires that a reasonable amount always be kept in reserve to ensure that funds are available to complete pending projects under review. The fund is stable, and the ending fund balance will be adequate for this needed reserve. We do anticipate some exciting major projects in the upcoming year, including the Capitol building seismic upgrade and the second phase of the Pringle Square apartments. In addition to building permits, the division operates the one-stop permit application center on the 3rd floor of the Civic Center and issues parking permits and various city licenses. The division has a goal of becoming paperless in 2 years. I'm happy to say that mobile inspections have been implemented, and we are testing the first phase of e-plan review, which allows building permit applications to be submitted online. We have been able to maintain our accreditation for the last 3 years, verifying that we operate at the highest ethical, legal, and technical standards. For the upcoming fiscal year, we look forward to making customer service improvements to our permit application center to better serve the public. These will include a more comfortable waiting area and ADA accessible counters. Finally, our goal is to have a fully automated e-plan review system across departments, which will result in increased staff efficiency and time saving and convenience for the customer. This capability will help put Salem in a very competitive position for economic development. And my final comments are about the Public Art Fund. The city has recognized that the visual arts contribute to our livability. The Salem Revised Code provides for 0.5% of the cost of city improvement projects to be dedicated to public art. The art shown here was purchased as part of the Public Works Traffic Control Center remodel. The Salem Public Art Commission worked closely with Director Fernandez to choose suitable art, and these panels are now located just outside the traffic control conference room. Thank you.
Okay, I have one person signed up for public testimony, Patty Tipton.
Is this close enough? My name is Patty Tipton. I'm the chair for Lansing Neighborhood. And last night we had our annual meeting. I started doing chair work several years now. When we started, we had a budget for communications that not only paid for what we had, but we also had Howard. And Howard was our liaison from the city of Salem that would come once a month and inform us of what was happening with the city. Chuck remembers him, I think. Anyway, we loved Howard, and we still love Howard. He was a great asset, and he even volunteered to come out and help plant trees. I have a picture of him and my grandson watering a tree at Eastgate Basin. I can't remember when it happened, but one day we were told that Howard wouldn't be coming anymore, and that budget was cut. And we all cried, and we were all sorry that he had to leave, and he knew that we would really, really miss him. And every once in a while we hear from Howard, or someone talks to Howard and tells us that he's doing okay. We also had a nice budget for monthly agendas every month that went out to our neighborhood. That went away too. When I started out, we had about an average of 20 to 30 people that would come to our meetings on the different subjects of every month. Last night at my annual meeting, I shouldn't say mine, but our meeting, there was about half a dozen neighbors that showed up. We had a good agenda. We had we introduced the new chair, or the new CEO or director of the state fairgrounds. We also had the police department there to talk about how to spot a drug house and the different ways we can help our families. Half a dozen only showed up for our annual meeting. Anyway, what I'm here for is not only to support this group of people that we work with, because I think we don't get paid enough. They work long, hard hours. They offer great services. I don't blame them one bit. But I do wish there was some way we can communicate to our neighborhood. Most of my people do not have computers. They cannot get the information off a computer because they don't have one. We have a lot of people that are elderly. Not that elderly people don't have computers, but they just don't. The only way I can honestly say we need to get the communication out there to increase our numbers. And we need that support from you guys. Like I said, Brady and his team, fantastic. They don't just get paid enough. And thank you.
Right. Patty, I think you might have some questions. Member McQuaid?
Thank you. Thanks for coming down, and thanks for waiting so long. We appreciate that and apologize for the delay. What if you were queen for a day, how much money would you be asking for to be able to communicate adequately with your associate?
I don't know. I do know it was a lot of money to mail our agendas out every month, and it's very costful, and it's really hard and financially. But I was even thinking about it today, because last night we talked about it at our meeting and how sad it is that not that many people showed up for our annual meeting. There are outlets now that we can advertise it through the Statesman Journal and so forth, but I'm still kind of new at that part. And so I'm getting to know that part. We do wonderful things in our neighborhood. One of the biggest things we did was through the Salem Parks and the Salem Parks Foundation, we were able to purchase a street light for Livingston Park this year, and it's going in. But I don't know how much the cost would be for sending out agendas every month. And I was honestly thinking about maybe postcards with the Lansing Neighborhood Association, the date and time of our meetings, locations, and my husband suggested maybe 1 or 2 items that are on the agenda that month. And I said, well, that's a good idea. And that wouldn't cost much. I don't know about postcards, but you know, that would get out there and people put it on their fridge or put it in their purse and carry it with them if they need to. It would get that communication out to them.
Well, I agree with you. I have one more question for you. Do you have a mailing list, or did you have a mailing list of folks you mailed
No, it was sent to every household in our neighborhood.
And you got that mailing list from who?
Through the
city?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brady and his department.
Okay, so we can figure out what a budget might be for mailings, but, okay, thank you.
But like I said, the second part was Howard. I mean, Miss Howard, too.
So I just have a comment, and then I see a couple other hands. So I do thank you for coming down. Thank you for the flower, by the way. I skipped out of the meeting last night before you had a chance to give it to me. So thank you so much for bringing it down. I told you I had many meetings this week, so I appreciate that. So, and I hear from Lansing probably more than any that you really have seen the effects of the cuts from when we have cut the neighborhood budget, especially the neighborhood's communication budget, and not getting those agendas mailed out. And I think part of my comment is maybe there are, and I appreciate you've been thinking about some creative ways to maybe do it a little differently that may be more cost effective than what we were doing before, which was, stuffing envelopes with
no, we don't
agendas.
Need to stuff envelopes.
Right, and mailing them out. So maybe a postcard or something. And just to kind of tag on, and this is more of a comment, I think, about the communications. I get some neighborhood association, agendas. They just pop right up in my email. But I've had some communications come from the city that say something like, check out your neighborhood association, and I have to click a link, and then I have to click a link, and then I have to click a link, and really, in today's world, 1 click, 2 clicks, I mean, you think it's just like 2 seconds to click a second thing, people check out very quickly. So even in our electronic communication, that we might be able to also reach people, definitely that could use some help. And I hear from Lansing more than my other neighborhoods about that.
We're a very small group.
Yes, but you're small but mighty, so that's great. Okay, I think we have a couple other hands. I saw Member Benjamin, and then Member Benars, and then Member Bailey.
Hey, thanks for coming down and waiting. I totally empathize with your situation. Sitting on the chair for NOLA, it was somewhat anemic when I got on, and knowing that this is the money we have to use, we tried to maximize it by going door to door. Just coming down to your neighborhood association or getting folks to go down there is just difficult enough. Even you'd think they'd be more important. But try to advertise to them by going door to door is an extra step that the core members probably should look into doing. But yeah, and I'd love to be able to have the mailers. Isn't it true that new residents get a first mailer to tell them about? Okay, there could probably be some improvement at very little cost to at least get the new people.
Yeah. You want to answer that?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
If it's okay, can Brady answer some of that question?
Oh yeah, I should probably go to staff. I'm sorry.
Because he's the brains behind the operation here.
Well, basically, I just empathize with what you're saying, and I understand that there are creative ways. Knowing that most of the members at NOLA at one time didn't have computers either, or bothered with them too much.
No.
They just knew to come to the meeting, and that you want to try to revitalize that with the new generations coming in. Hopefully, that do have the computers and stuff. So.
Yeah, well, most of my people that come to my meeting are retired.
Right.
And they're 60 years old and above. And they're actually a very active group, but but 1 or 2 people cannot. I mean, you got to think about the Lansing size. I mean, that's a lot of territory to cover for 5 people or 2 people. Right now I have 2 very active ladies that wanted brochures of our neighborhood association. We gave them to them last night, and but it was only 100. And that's not going to cover very many houses. And they can only do so many hours a day, so whatever happens. So I'm grateful for any help I can get. But I'm only one person, too.
Okay, Member Benars.
Patty, I saw you, I think, earlier this week, or was it last week, with the chair the monthly
Yeah.
or the quarterly chairs meetings.
Those are very helpful too.
I know they are. Communicate, and you mentioned some of the things about the Statesman Journal at that meeting to the other chairs so that the word could get out. I wanted to let you know that we are listening to what you're having to say and others about communication. And I just wanted to note that this is actually, the third time tonight that we've talked about communicating.
I heard it.
It's interesting that it's a theme that I think that we're working on, and are going to have to work on at this point. It's one that we, as a council, as a budget committee, I suppose, but as a council, I know it's important to us as well. So we'll be asking, one of the options would be, could we opt in instead of opt out, opt in to get received mail, as opposed to opting out, so that we reduce the mailing costs. In other words, if you said, I don't have internet, can I opt in to get a written or a postcard reminder kind of thing? That's what I'm thinking of. We'll look at some of those things along the way.
I appreciate any help we can get.
Thank you.
Member Bailey, then Member Nanke.
I'm done. Thank you. I'll pass.
Just to wrap everything around here, in regards to graffiti, to let people know about your neighborhood association meeting, you could use some of your communication funds for spray paint, and it would stay up for 5 days prior to the meeting, depending on how you
Put it on the utility bill.
The PGD was months, not days. I had testimony from my neighbor that told me about that, and I was not happy when I heard about it.
All right, thank
We're
you,
a small
Patty.
group.
Thanks for coming down, and we can tell it's after 9 o'clock.
But if you have any questions regarding the neighborhood associations, Brady is a great resource.
I'm sure we will have some questions for Brady.
And I'm very happy for the grass person. We will be using them.
Great.
So we will also be giving them lots of work, so they will earn their pay.
Thank you.
And thank you for the graffiti stuff, because I had a lot of compliments. And there was a lot of gratitude at my meeting last night from people that said they were really grateful I came down and talked to you guys. So thank you for listening to us. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Are there questions for staff and/or discussion and/or review? Okay, Member Benjamin, Member Benars, Lewis, Bailey, McCoy. Member Benjamin.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the communications fund for the neighborhood associations. Understanding that when I first moved in, I think I got 3 or 4 of those in a row, and I'm not a homeowners association, and I threw it away foolishly. Now that I understand it, it was a very important document that I should have followed up on. But so in regards to communications, the way I understood it is we wanted to get, NOLA wanted to get a email list and or the mailing list for the people in our neighborhood, so that we could opt to send out 100 one month, one place, 100 over here. If we had a list of emails, we could do an email campaign. And I was told that that's the property of the city, and that we don't have access to that. And I can understand why, but I just wanted to see if there's a way we can stir that up a little bit and make it work. Also, when we first move in, or when people move in now, they're new to the community, and they register or something, I don't know, does that send a tickle file where they get a document stating that this is your neighborhood association, this is your ward, Counselor? Okay.
I'm going to let Brady start and see where we go from there.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors, Budget Committee members. My name's Brady Rogers. I am your Neighborhood Enhancement Division Administrator. First off, the email list. Every neighborhood association is an independent organization. The people that come to your meetings and sign up on your sign-up sheets are giving you their email address. Right. We have those. We have those in trust for you to email out those agendas, and yes, you can have access to that. I don't know where you were told that you can't, but we have, say for NOLA, we have the NOLA neighbors who have signed up on the NOLA sign-up sheets at the NOLA Neighborhood Association. And if you had something else besides an agenda you'd like to email them, or the NOLA people did, we could do that for you.
Well, it's more like when I first got into the neighborhood associations, I went to the City of Salem website, found out which my neighborhood association was, and they asked me, would you like to have an email reminding you of agendas and da 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 da? And I said, oh, absolutely. So I clicked on it, and I get that information from the city.
Yes,
So,
you should still
and
be
I never
getting-
gave it to the neighborhood association, and I got information.
Yeah.
So there's people that might be out there that want to get information from the neighborhood association, and they get whatever the city sends them, and then they'll opt to go or not.
Yeah.
And
That's another way to get on that list, is to click on that opt-in on the city's webpage.
The neighborhood associations want that list that you got.
Okay. It's theirs. Yeah, we have it.
Okay. Even if they don't write in and sign in their email address, the neighborhood associations still have access to what the city has captured.
We would give you access
Oh,
to that.
okay, well then,
to
there you
that.
go.
If we, yeah.
Thank you. That's not what I heard before, so.
All right, Member Benars?
So a couple clarifications. I believe, well, I think what Councilor or Member Benjamin is talking about is there's an email address that city owns. The neighborhood associations are separate, and therefore there's no mingling between the two. Is that correct?
There are neighborhood association email lists, and you can get on them by signing up at a neighborhood association meeting or through the city's website. There are also other lists that we have at the city that are more comprehensive, maybe people that wanted to get information about police or fire issues, that sort of thing. In general, they're not commingled. We have the neighborhood association sort of folks that are available to you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and I think there's a reason for that not being commingled, and I think it has to do with kind of the protocol for keeping information about people, and you know, they've signed up for one particular thing, and if they start getting emails from someplace else, that often causes complaints. And so what we try to do is, you know, if somebody has signed up for neighborhood information, certainly that would be shared with anybody from the neighborhood associations and so forth. But as Brady was saying, if they've signed up for library services or something, then to take that information and share it with other people, to start sending them information would probably not be well received in all cases.
You're confirming what I thought, which is that the information is separate, and you still have to, the neighborhood associations still have to glean it, which is apropos to my next comment, which I was just at Sunny Slope last week, and the sign-in sheet has the name and it has a phone number, but there's no place to put down your email address. And I have reminded the 4 neighborhood associations that I go to, please collect those email addresses, but it may be something that you might want to suggest at, well, I guess at the quarterly chair meeting
can do that.
or other locations.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
My real reason for raising my hand had to do with the mailing. First off, do you have any idea what it cost when we used to mail?
At this point, mailing somebody like an agenda in an envelope with a stamp, that's about the most expensive way we can communicate. It's around $1.
$1 a letter?
Yeah, for the printing, the mailing, the time, the postage. It's about $1 to get something out like that, and maybe a little less.
Do I understand that there's, what, 160, no, how many letters would you have to send out?
Well, there is a communications budget for each neighborhood association of about
how much?
about $500,
Okay.
a little more. And there's 12 meetings in a year, so one person receiving an agenda each month is $12, so you could afford to send about 40 people in a neighborhood monthly agendas with your communications money.
The other side of this, could they opt in, which is one of the things that I suggested. I don't have a computer. Can you send me a postcard, the least expensive way of by mail? Is that possible?
Postcard's about 2/3 the cost of a letter, so you could maybe reach 60 people in the neighborhood with postcards monthly.
Unless we increase the funding for the neighborhood communication funds, that's the other side. we're spending how much for all the neighborhoods? We have 17 neighborhoods?
18 active neighborhoods, a little over $9,000 in that communications funds for all 18 neighborhoods.
But it is important to note that per policy decision from last year, we are allowed to, the neighborhood associations are allowed to roll the money over if they don't spend it all in 1 year, and they can build up a fund for a special project if they choose to.
So they'll get people to come to the meeting every third year because they'll have enough money to
If that's what they choose to do.
180 people. Okay, thank you. We answered the questions.
Member Lewis.
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Member Bailey.
Yes, two things. One, to beat this topic up a little bit more. I don't know right now what this budget committee can, in the context of the rest of the budget, can do about it. But I am concerned that there's a slow death spiral here with the city's commitment to neighborhood associations and outreach. To me, the city is a circle of involvement. And part of that circle resides here in the city council. Part of it is the staff and what goes on day-to-day functions on, paid staff on behalf of the residents. And the other part of the circle is citizens who come together in their community. And I know in my life, I have zero input or contact on what the neighborhood association in my area's meeting schedule is and what's going on. I mean, I happen to know it, but I don't get anything about it. So for all intents and purposes, it's invisible. And I'm a person who's tuned in. So I'm concerned that if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And you get into this death spiral where pretty soon city employees, that's them. It's not us. And we see in tragic examples around this country when neighborhoods are alienated from the government that is really theirs, things unfold that none of us want to have happen. So to me, even though right now things may seem benign, it's part of this gradual erosion and corrosion of the bond between citizens, neighborhoods, and the city government that serves them. So I would really encourage this council to have a serious discussion about how to reinvigorate that program. I think this first or second year I was on the budget committee, we had the unpleasant task of eliminating the staff who went to the meetings and cutting the budgets for communications, and we've sort of drifted along because of that budget issue. Well, we're not totally out of the woods yet, but we're far enough along that I think we need to revisit that and do it seriously, or else I think we're going to be beyond the point of no return. Second, but on a totally different topic, I wanted to know whether or not the State Street project is, maybe we'll hear about this under urban renewal, but is that linked up with urban renewal funding at all?
No, it's a planning project that is funded in large part by a state grant, a transportation and growth management grant that we applied for. But that's a great segue. You didn't really ask me a question with that first point, but I'd like to.
What would
like to respond anyway. Thank you. I think it's important to know, and I tried to keep my initial presentation brief because it's late, and I know you don't want to listen to me talk a lot. But I have to point out to you that it's important to understand that in the Community Development Department, the general fund portion of the Community Development Department, we have sort of reinvented how we do our business by necessity because of the cuts and so forth. And our Neighborhood Enhancement Division, led by Brady, is working much closer these days with our planning division led by Lisa Anderson-Ogilvie, who couldn't be here tonight. She would be, but she's out of town. And an example of the collaboration that's going on is, in fact, the recently completed joint neighborhood plan project with NEN and Cessna. First time that we ever put two neighborhoods together and jointly did a long-range plan for their neighborhood. And I've got to tell you, and Chuck knows, he was at, I think, every meeting that we had, the attendance was phenomenal. we got more people at those planning meetings than either, I think, either neighborhood association was attracting at their regular meetings, because there was something exciting to talk about. The staff went out, beat the streets to talk about it. Both the neighborhood enhancement staff was talking about it, the planning staff was talking about it. And just one of the outcomes of that project, in addition to engaging people that had never been engaged with us before, one project that came out of that was, in fact, the State Street Corridor project. It was identified as something that really needed to be done. And fortunately, there was a grant cycle that just happened to be coming along at the same time, and our staff got together and worked in collaboration with the Public Works staff. I should definitely give them some credit too. And we were able to get this, this grant, and we're just about to kick that project off. And I anticipate that the enthusiasm and the momentum will just carry on in that case. Ms. Tipton didn't mention, but we are about to kick off a joint neighborhood plan with her neighborhood association, along with the NESCA folks, and we're really excited about that too. But I anticipate that that joint neighborhood planning project will generate the same kind of enthusiasm, and you will see some positive results from that. And it's because we are collaborating among ourselves as a staff and trying to get more bang for our buck by working together, more closely together. So thank you for that opportunity to put that advertisement in there.
Member Berger.
I have a question about the art fund. Mm-hmm. It appears to have suddenly gotten $30,000 from the Cultural and Tourism Fund, when its normal amount is much less than that.
Yes.
What was the logic behind this year being the year that it gets $30,000, and I can't really tell what it's specified for other than unspecified art?
Yeah, right. Well, it hasn't gotten it yet. It's proposed in the budget, but the rationale for it was we are just beginning a really exciting project to deploy public art into the downtown. And this is something that I should probably let the mayor talk about, because she's much more in tune with it than I am. But this is something that the various art association groups in town have long dreamt about, to get the public art that we already have as a city out into more visible places so the public can enjoy it and so forth. Well, there's a cost to that, because you have to build these art wells into the street corners. You also have to oftentimes, polish up the art, maintain it, and so forth, move it. That's a cost. So for the first one that was accomplished was the Cube. If you're familiar with the Gilchrist building downtown, that sculpture out front is the first one. And our plan, and I say our loosely, but the plan is to have 11 of those throughout the downtown. And so we think that this will help promote visitors to the downtown. It will augment tourism. I just the other day, I kid you not, I was downtown walking by that building, and I saw two couples, and they were taking turns posing in front of the Cube, taking pictures of each other. So the artists were right. If you get art out, people will enjoy it, and that's our rationale.
Follow up to that, you described it as repositioning art, but this pretty clearly says acquisition of art. Mm-hmm. So is $23,000 going to acquire art, or is this mislabeled?
The requirement for the Richard, what page are you on?
I'm on 168.
Chris Snyder for the management analyst for the Community Development Department. The Public Art Fund has a Salem Revised Code requires that any funding coming into the Public Art Fund be divided with a 70-20-10 split. That means that 70% goes to acquisition, 20% I believe goes to the maintenance and upkeep, and then the 10%, I forget what the other part of it was. Let's see, acquisition, management, and then maintenance. So because the funding's coming in to the fund, public art fund, it has to be split that way, and that was what we were told by legal.
So we are spending $23,000 to acquire.
So there's $23,000 that's available for being leveraged for the purchase of new art.
Okay, and just kind of a general note, we spent a lot of time on Top Fund today. The TOT people have left, and they did, or Scott did make the statement that everything on this list is very valuable, but we want one more thing. I'm paraphrasing and don't mean to quote someone inaccurately, but I would be very curious to hear what the association would say about pretty much $30,000 for a website or $30,000 for this public art, which one they would pick. I'd be curious to hear that. I don't want to be put in a position to make that decision on which one's better for tourism, but I would be curious what they have to say.
Member McQuaid?
It's been so long, I forgot what I was going to ask. Brady, if we're using, we're using the neighborhood association email mailing list, does it have to include an opt-out clause like I have to do it when I'm sending stuff to my members?
Actually, the process would probably, we've got it all these lists set up in our, it's called MailChimp. And so to access it, what we'd probably prefer is you give us the material you'd like to send out, and we could just easily send it out rather than transferring lists or anything like that.
But my question is, we have to, if it's a federal, basically, law, we have to put you cannot, if you want to do here, click here to opt out if you don't want to get another one of these mailings. You can't, otherwise you're spamming them and then you get all kinds of problems.
I believe there is that option when you receive a MailChimp. You can get out of it.
Yes.
I have a question, Glenn, on the building, whatever it's called, building services or building. I've got
Building and Safety Fund.
Building and Safety Fund. Why is the starting balance so high?
Well, we have to maintain a reserve to make sure that the way our process works, people pay for permits up front, and then we do the project review. The project review can take months. So once we collect the money, we still have to pay the staff to do the work, and it could be for an extended period of time. So we need to keep a reserve on hand at all times to make sure we have enough money to carry through and complete the project review. The second thing that we do as a standard, it's part of our, I believe it's part of our standards that we keep in order to keep being accredited. We need to keep a 6-month amount in the event that if there was a huge downturn in the economy, we didn't get another building permit for 6 months. We have 6 months that we can keep the lights on and keep the staff working to finish up the projects is also to answer public questions and that sort of thing. So those things combined creates a need to have a ending fund balance. I think our ending fund balance that we're proposing this year is about $4.8 million. And so it's a combination of those two things. Now, I will say that we are probably at about where we would want to be, and if it grew much more than that, then we probably would start to get nervous about, gee, do we need to look at our fee schedule or whatever? But right now, I think it's about where it should be.
So, if building picks up, does it sort of balance out naturally? Because right now you've got 4.9 as the beginning working capital and expenditures anticipated for the year at 3.8. So you've got over a year over a year and like 15 months worth of reserves.
Yeah, well, that also includes any capital expenditures that we would want to make. That would include our remodel of the PAC Center that I talked about earlier. So, like I said, it's healthy, but I don't think it's excessive at this point.
Member Bennett, did I see your hand?
No, you didn't.
Okay, Mayor Peterson.
Thank you. I'd like to try to explain a little bit more about the Art Fund, and I appreciate Richard Berger's questions because they're certainly relevant. And this is on page 166 in the document, 166 and 167. But you'll see on 166 the Public Art Fund expenditures detailed that totals $33,150. When the Salem Public Arts Commission was created, there was no funding for it, and in fact its funds should come from 0.5% of the cost of any new facility that the city of Salem might build. Well, as you know, we're not building anything these days. You know, we've built the Center 50 Plus, various things happened in the past, but nothing that would generate funds for this fund. And yet, the Salem Public Arts Commission has been charged by this council with a certain routine of services and duties because the city is, fortunately, the recipient of artwork that go back to gifts to the city back in the 30s of artwork. And along the way, many of these pieces have not been well cared for, or not even documented. And so in the process of the Oregon Artist Series Foundation mounting an art show of city artwork, they found pieces that needed to be repaired and pieces that needed some serious conservation in addition to just minor repairs. So funds were needed to continue that kind of care for the art collection that we have, which is really a lovely collection, and it's probably one of our greatest secrets, that the public have either donated the artwork or raised funds for the donation of the artworks. So in order for the Salem Public Arts Commission to begin really doing the work of assessing and repairing and cataloging and caring for the art, there is a cost to that, because although the Arts Commission are all volunteers, it does require staff time, and also it does require some, from time to time, experts, conservationists or art experts who can value a piece or assess a piece and decide whether we should even accept a contribution of a certain piece of art. Those are things that need to be done by professionals and can be purchased on a kind of an hourly advice basis. And as far as the special payments for the purchase of art, you'll notice that if you're over at the Salem Convention Center, there's quite a courtyard of artwork there, sculptures, and many of those sculptures came to be there on loan because of the Oregon Artist Series Foundation and now the Salem Public Arts Commission that is working out across the state with artists who are willing to loan works to that sculpture court and also to sell pieces. And along with that, even if a piece is donated for, say, a 5-year period of time, there are often costs that go with transporting the art and installing the art. And so I think that that has a lot to do with why there's a line item there of $23,210. So I don't personally know how the $33,150 was determined. I just know the reason and the philosophy behind and the reason for needing to have some fund to begin this process. And yes, the cube was placed, and now the plan for several more to be placed around the downtown, maybe some of which will come from the sculpture garden, maybe some will come from artists who are willing to donate or sell, and I believe at quite a reduced price. Sometimes these are sculptures that have been commissioned and been in other places, and their time there is up, you know, maybe because of a remodel of a building and the sculpture is no longer appropriate, that artist then receives a piece back and in many cases will donate it for a period of time to a community. And that's part of how we're getting sculpture into Salem at this time. But there are some costs that go along with moving the art, installing the art, and caring for the art. And so I think that's probably mostly how that figure was determined.
Member Benjamin, then Member Lewis.
Well, I just want to go on record that this city shouldn't be buying or renting art right now. We got 2 fire departments down, a few cops light, and many other issues that have been looming for a long time. However, I love the explanation. That makes sense. A little bit of money to maintain that art, that makes sense. We shouldn't be buying it, shouldn't be renting it, but taking care of it, great. Now, it also should look at that if it sells, then we get reimbursed for what we've done with it by maintaining it. That's that. Going with the multifamily housing situation, I sat through a few of those meetings with, I forgot the name of that outfit, but
Eco Northwest, yeah.
yeah, and you know, I couldn't see where we were light, but they said, well, it's during the course of 20 years. And I'm like, well, why would be overwrought with people that need to rent a place over the next 20 years? And hopefully, if we do our job right, it's because we have jobs, growth, and everything else. Having said that, I saw for rent everywhere, okay, during that time frame. I know we have a lot of space that hasn't been designated yet, but I'd like to think that if somebody wants to build a duplex, triplex, multiplex, the first thing they're going to do is come to you and say, where can we put this? Because I'd like to put it right here. And you guys can look at it and say, you know what, let's get a consensus out there to find out if we can just turn that into multifamily right there. But leave it whatever it's zoned now. You guys know better than I do, but it seems like instead of trying to figure out where we're going to put this stuff, let's let the market decide. And if we need to say yes on something, let's do it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I would just say that it's important to understand that this housing need requirement comes down to us from the state. It's part of the statewide planning law. So as far as the latitude we have is we're somewhat limited. But at the end of the day, our job is just to make sure that our zoning allows for more multifamily housing to get built. If the market doesn't build it, then there's really nothing that we can do other than what we've done. So we're not guaranteeing that there will be more housing of any type built. We're just making sure that if it were to be built, there's somewhere that it's allowed to be built.
So that it satiates the state's need to govern us about what we're supposed to be doing with our land.
We are in the state of Oregon, and we have statewide planning law here.
All right. No, I get that. I just, you know, well, I'm going to get that mushroom plant out in Ward 6. Let's make that whole thing multifamily. Boom, we're done. And then whoever else wants to come in and put commercial, single-family housing, we can parcel it up. You know?
Bingo, you win.
You know, just be done with it. But I like the market to decide where we're going to put multifamily, where we're going to put commercial, because if we put something multifamily, but somebody comes in and says, I'm with deep pockets, saying I'd like to put maybe a food corral or a coffee shop or some commercial stuff. It's like, well, we got to think about it because it's multifamily, and just dragging our knuckles. And that's one thing that we don't want to have happen is the city's got to pivot just like that. Does that make sense? Okay, mushroom factory, multifamily.
All right, Mayor Peterson and then Member Lewis.
Hi, thanks. I have I want to clarify, I totally agree with you, Councilor Benjamin. The city should not take money from the general fund to purchase art. This city has never spent money from the general fund, to my knowledge, to purchase art. The artwork that you see on that wall, those canvases are major, important works of art that were either donated to the city when the Civic Center was built, or individuals raised the money, donated the money to the city, and specified, now you can buy these works of art. I totally agree with that program. And this money to the Public Arts Fund comes out of the TOT funds, cultural and tourism funding, which is prescribed to raise tourism. And so to me it seemed like an appropriate request. out of the TOT funds to bring some money into the art fund, really as a stopgap until the time when the city does build something and have some money for an arts fund.
Yeah, that's great. I just thought if I was an artist, I would give anything to donate art right on the main drag and put my name on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to buy it, but we should maintain it. It just said acquire. He pointed it out. It said acquire art. So I was like, well, acquiring to me means I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Right, and that's what the fund, that's exactly what the tourism fund is supposed to do, is to help us have an opportunity to draw tourists into this community. And we know that art can be a draw, and we also know it's an educational opportunity. And so there are appropriate times to purchase art, and there are appropriate times to go out and do exactly what citizens have done here, and that is raise money or ask artists to contribute. And several of the sculptures that are at the sculpture court right now are totally donated, loaned to the city, and it's a great contribution by artists.
Member Lewis.
Glenn, just one quick question, if you could. This is about the capacity of the Community Development Department to serve the building community. I'll ask it this way. In 2011-12, there were 36 employees, not a whole lot of building going on. In the proposed budget, it's 30 employees, and at least I'm being awoken every morning now by the power nail guns. I don't know about anybody else. So we're starting to see building again. Assure me that you have enough capacity to meet the needs as we start building more in the community.
We actually have established performance benchmarks for both planning and, well, for all three divisions, but in terms of development, for both planning and building and safety. We know how many applications per land use planner are currently in the hopper. We know how many permit specialists we have versus the number of permits coming in. We keep track of those ratios, and we have set a benchmark, and if we're within, by our experience and past history, we know if we stay within this range, we're probably going to deliver timely, efficient, quality service. If we start to go out of that range, in other words, if a planner is handling, today's handling or she's handling 1.8 applications per day, and 3 months from now that's 3 applications per day, that's way out of the range. We know then that we have a capacity issue. We have, right now, we're well within the benchmarks, even though, as I said earlier, we've had a steady but moderate increase in applications. We've been able to accommodate that by rotating staff into where they're needed and so forth. We have proposed a modest amount of seasonal money so that if we get a robust growth spurt, we have something to go to immediately. We also have, at the moment, we have a vacant planning position that we're not intending to fill right now, with the idea that, again, if we see sustained growth, we will be able to use that as well. So, short answer is we're tracking it. We know where we should be, and if we start to see something going higher than that, we will take action.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 12, goal setting policy discussion. And I see some hands. I will remind you, I believe that this body has that 10 o'clock time limit and would require a motion and approval to extend beyond 10 o'clock. So just please keep that in mind as we move into discussion. Okay, so I have, let's see, I see Member Bennett, Member Berger, Benars. I think I saw others. So Member Bennett.
Now would be the time to do wish list items?
Yes.
Okay. I move the Budget Committee add a $50,000 item to the wish list to purchase automated external defibrillators to place in all police cars in Salem.
Like to address your motion? Seconded by Member Nanke.
Okay. Just briefly, you'll remember this picture of Salem. I live in this real dark green area. I'm in really good shape. If you don't, you're not. I just point that out only because what you need, I spent a little time talking about this morning. What you need is someone there within about 5.5 minutes if you have a heart attack. Remember the numbers we were given. 417 fires, in excess of 14,000 medical, and a lot of that is cardiac. And I am genuinely concerned when you get out here, yellow, orange, red, and it is all around. We've got police officers out here who know CPR. We might as well give them the second half of the life-saving equipment. And for 50,000 bucks, coupled with, if you took a look at this bunch, the Salem Fire Foundation and the money they're raising rather, we'd be able to raise the $75,000 it's going to take to make this happen. My feeling is we ought to do it absolutely as quickly as we can, because not doing it, somebody doesn't make it. Just quite simply, somebody won't make it. And I think it is well worth the investment. It just makes sense to have our police. It's not going to change this map. I will still live in this really neat dark green area, and others will live who apparently can walk the edge better than I can. But the one thing you'll have is a cop car near you out at the north end, over in West Salem, down at the south end, in southeast, where there's really a very likely chance that somebody's going to make it and make it quickly and save somebody's life. That's my pitch.
Member Benjamin?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would hope, though, that there was some sort of procedure put in place to alert the police officer in the area, because I don't know, when people call 911, they're asking for an ambulance because somebody's having a heart attack. Is the police officer going to be able to respond or hear that?
There are protocols to resolve that.
I just don't want to have another piece of equipment rattling around in the trunk. That's like really expensive. That's all I'm concerned about.
I just want it in the trunk when I hit the deck.
So do I, so do I, which is sooner than later. But I just wanted to bring out that.
Coffee before we go finish it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not loading up police cars with more and more stuff to the point where it's getting dusty. There's not a protocol. You're saying there is. I'm going to trust you on that.
There is.
Okay, because sometimes the police are the last ones to get there, but the fire department's the first, always. Or the ambulance, or something. Unless we need a police officer out here right now, they'll be first. But, okay, thank you.
Member Benars?
Just real quickly on that pulse point, it was brought up, I think, last week from our fire marshal, and it's in, if we can do it with anybody, the police certainly are going to have with all the technology that they have in their car. I assure you that it's out there. Any idea what the maintenance on that life is of those units?
You know, I don't know. I apologize for not having that kind of information. I do know that apparently they are easy enough to maintain that they're placing them in grade schools where kids can get at them after they've learned CPR and how to operate them. So something about them makes them available in those situations. So my impression is that it's not a particularly expensive or difficult process.
Well, apparently I do have a bone to pick because I think I'm in a red zone on that map of yours.
You are.
Yeah. We're way out of the southwest corner.
But I'll tell you what, if a cop is patrolling South River Road,
you're okay.
You're going to make it.
Right.
Yeah, under my plan.
Member Bailey?
Do we have a second?
Yeah, we have a second.
I moved the previous question.
Call for the question. Okay, all of those in favor of adding $50,000 to the wish list to put AEDs in all police cars signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. All right, I have Member Berger next.
Sorry. I enjoyed the conversation today very much. I really like it when members of the public come because it really helps our discussion. I wish more members would come. I'm sure everyone's gone to sleep who's watching on TV, but I really do appreciate that. One conversation of particular interest to me was the library discussion. I would very much like to know, I'm concerned that our library is slowly being dwindled away. Not that it's going away, but you got to make investments in order to maintain. And a few more hours here and there can serve a whole lot of people. So I'm very curious to see what it would take to add some hours on Sunday, as well as look at what it would take to add hours at West Salem. And I know that would take some staff time to really understand what those numbers would be, but I'd like to make a motion to spend some staff time to get me those, come back to this committee with those numbers.
Second.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call for the question. So all those in favor of getting information about extending hours for the library signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, we are coming up on the 10 o'clock hour, so in order to extend, I would need a motion to extend past 10
5
o'clock.
minutes, 6 minutes.
It's fast.
4 minutes,
Well,
okay.
that clock isn't necessarily right. That's off.
6 minutes.
Okay, oh, we do have 6 minutes, you're right. Okay,
My cell
all
phone
right,
says 6.
so,
I still have to take out my recyclables.
Member Benars.
So where was it going on with this? So I wanted to make a motion as well. I wanted to make a motion to increase the funding for the Cultural and Tourism Board by $36,000.
A second.
If I may talk about this for a second, one of my options on this is not to take funds out of the general fund in order to pay the additional $36,000. One of them would be to reduce the ending or beginning working capital for the following year. It is still higher than what it has been, or right in line with it. So there are other ways to fund it other than just having to cut.
Member Berger.
Just to be clear, this is to add this to the wish list?
To the wish list.
Okay.
Yes. We're going to come back to the wish list at the end of this whole process anyway.
Member McQuaid.
So what's it for? I guess I missed. So you put 36,000.
The webpage.
The webpage.
The webpage, okay.
Basically, to take it back up to 771.
And if I need to include that in the motion, that's what the inference was, the 36,000 for the webpage.
Okay, I'll call, did you have a question, McQuaid? Yeah, Member Benjamin,
I
second.
mean, we had 3 issues tonight. All of them were about communication. You know, all of them were talking about we're not communicating as well as we could or should, and this is one of those places here. Yeah, probably they should go back and tighten their budget somewhere. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't give it to the art commission, or should they? I mean, it's all tied together, but it's a discussion that needs to be held, and it's an important issue. I've been screaming about social media and for a long time. The 3 years that I've been here, I've been talking about it.
Okay,
Anyway.
all right. All those in favor of the motion to increase our cultural fund by $36,000 by reducing the beginning fund balance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Would the nays raise your hand, please? So motion passes.
Need 10. You got 10?
Does it pass?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did get 10
Madam
votes.
Chair, point of order.
Yes. Mhm.
That was to add it to the wish list.
The wish list, yes, I apologize. Okay, I see no other hands. We have no one here from the public to testify. We have no other business, so we are adjourned.